It is Wednesday, May 13th, 2015. We're coming to you live from the studios of the Hagmann Hagmann Report here in Northwest Pennsylvania. I'm Doug Hagmann at the helm with fellow investigator, researcher, and most importantly, son Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report. We like to call ourselves America's premier father-son investigative reporting team. You know, our job is to bring you the news that propels the headlines, the news that is shaped, twisted, convoluted, and hidden amid a funhouse of smoke and mirrors in the carnival that we call the corporate media. And as we like to say, we do the headline and news triage so you don't have to. We'd like to thank all of the new listeners. Thank you for checking in from all over the world. Many new listeners sending us emails today. God bless every one of you. And thank you, veteran listeners, for listening as well. For those new to the program, we broadcast live Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern time. Our home base on the internet is HagmannandHagmann.com. You have to spell it all out. And of course, Hagmann is Hagmann, the word and then Hagmann again.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. There you can access our previous programs, and you can access live programs. And even tonight, you can read about, what we're going to be talking about this evening. We have two very special guests with us. But before we get into that, I do want to say that tonight's broadcast is sponsored by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great tasting, very tasty, and guilt-free snacks right to your door. They've got over 100 flavors to choose from. You can choose from, things like Asiago and cheddar cheese crisps, pistachio power clusters, Big Island pineapple, you name it, they've got it. You'll never get bored of snacking ever again. Try NatureBox for free. Emphasize that. I want it for free. Just go to naturebox.com/CFB-radio. That's naturebox.com, all one word, naturebox, all one words, .com/CFB-radio to start your free trial. More on that later. And I just want to say, we're so fortunate. We're broadcasting live from our new studios here in northwestern Pennsylvania, and just want to thank each and every one of you one more time. We've been doing this all week, but thank you so much for helping us get to where we're at. We hope that we never let you down. We will always bring you the best of the best of the best. And tonight, I do suspect our program will reflect the best of the best of the best. We've got two fine gentlemen, two very good friends. Mr. Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com, just a brother in Christ and a man who is searching all the time for the truth and really a truth seeker, a truth finder, a guy that's ahead of his time, and just a brother in Christ and a dear friend. We also have with us Mr. Ross Powell. Now, from our website, he's got his website is survival401k.com, and it's listed on our website as well, linked off of our website. Both of them are stevequayle.com and survival401k.com. Very important topic tonight that we're going to be talking about. Very important topics that we're going to be talking about. I've got to tell you that one thing that I've noticed and I'm very concerned about is the state of the economy, what's happening with the killing off of the U.S. dollar. And who better to talk about the convergence of cyber piracy, cash criminalization, and the coming confiscation of your accounts, of our accounts in the banks, than these two gentlemen, Steve Quayle and Ross Powell. Before we bring them on, Joe, I'm going to bump it to you, and let's rock.
Yeah, glad to be here tonight. Excited for the show. While we are waiting for Steve, we do have Mr. Ross Powell with us. Again, his website is survival401k.com. Mr. Powell, it's great to have you on the show, and Steve is with us now also. But go ahead, Mr. Powell.
Great. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I got to tell you, Mr. Powell, this is your second appearance on our program, I believe. And you've been right on the money. You've talked about a number of things, and I was just looking over the topic for tonight again, from the Chinese yuan SDR update to the TPP to the Fed coin to the war on cash, which really we're hot on this war on cash. And I was talking to Steve Quayle earlier today about the war on cash. I see that coming in like a freight train. Steve, welcome to the program, my friend.
Well, thank you, Doug, and please, again, advise me of my volume, if you would. Unfortunately, where I live, I don't have the best phone connection. I don't use a microphone. I'm using a normal telephone. Looking to remedy that, but so if I'm too loud, just go ahead and tell me that I'm coming in too hot. I think tonight is a critical night because as we go into the Jade Helm 15, as we go into the overwhelming world trends that are doing an end to the United States dollar, what we're going to talk about tonight, and Ross has worked for two of the biggest banks in the world, intimately aware, obviously his contacts are still strategically placed. And I asked Ross when we would come on tonight, I said, Ross, I want to deal with these cyber attacks that are ongoing, and I want you to explain to people that people can have, it doesn't matter the technology that's out there, you can have the best firewalls, the best encryption, but if you've got somebody that's on the inside that can take down the whole system, and they know, the big five know this, then the vulnerability increases by magnitudes. So, Ross, if you would, tonight, can we just start and take your time, take your liberty, and talk about, obviously, the cyber attacks that are ongoing, the DNS attacks, and what it means to the person that may not understand how vulnerable they are. So, Ross, thank you for coming on tonight, and please take your liberty.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Yes, you were right on. Most of the large banks, and the two ones that I have worked at previously, and I have large contacts with them inside the bank still, are telling me that the denial of service attacks are happening every day. Last weekend especially was horrendous. Many people, I'm not going to mention the bank, but many people have probably witnessed that when they couldn't log into their online accounts. And these attacks are coming from overseas. They're also coming through domestic sites which are using proxies, and they're spoofing. So there's no way really to trace them. Fortunately, many of these banks have really upgraded their cybersecurity so that they can't break in from the outside, and that's led them to have a new tactic from the hackers. And these hackers are Iranians, they are ISIS people, maybe Russians, maybe the Chinese, but they're all hell-bent on bringing our economic system down, but starting with our banking, so that if you can't use your debit card or your credit card or your ATM card, you can't eat, and many Americans don't have more than 2 or 3 days of food in their houses. So what they're trying to do is make it where you can't get to your accounts, you can't actually access your money. And so right now, the latest strategy that I was told is just as recently as the day before yesterday, again, is that these denial of service attacks are sort of a smokescreen to sort of a misdirected play. If anybody knows football, misdirection, that they're convinced that the IT directors that I talk to and across the entire litany of banks, whether they're the top 5 or they're mid-tier, second-tier, even regional banks, could have moles in them, and they know that they're there. They can feel it, they can sense it, and they can see some things that have been done. So what these moles have been hired, they've been vetted by their background checks, and right now many of the banks are actually re-vetting critical personnel to go back and dig even further, because many times it's a shell of to make sure that you haven't stolen or you haven't been jailed or things like any kind of fiduciary crimes, and you can get in, or you don't have really bad credit. Those kind of things is what they look for. But now they're going back and to look and see what schools you went to, what kind of backgrounds you may have had, and because the whole consensus of a consortium of banks, that's the ones, all the top 5, all the second tiers, all believe that there are moles inside their organizations that are working in concert to create portals within these infrastructure inside the walls that allow hackers to get through. They could leave something open in their computer. They could IP in. They could do a lot of things where they get inside the walls and do damage that way to shut down your access, as well as try to steal money. I mean, that's billions of dollars have been stolen already, but they're also trying to deny service to you to having access to your money. So they know it's there. The feds are involved. The bank security is involved, and they're trying to flush these people out. But again, it's a war of attrition, even inside, whether it's on the battlefield or whether it's in money or in the economic world. The battle of attrition is here, and so we all need to be diligent and vigilant on as we look at our accounts. And so I have a whole list of things that I could recommend folks they can do. But Steve, that's where the setup is, and so it's really immediate. The people need to recognize that the whole banking system is on the bubble and under constant attack. So the chances of a cyber 9/11 or a Pearl Harbor of the banking system is very real, and people need to be cognizant of that.
Go ahead and give, your top 3 suggestions right out of the chute, Ross, because, again, I don't personally do online banking for that very reason. I just had my American Express card compromised over the weekend, and I had to get a whole new card, had to notify, some of the people that have my card on file that it had been breached. So I don't use in any way, shape, or form online banking. If people are doing it, they say, do they recommend or do I recommend it? Absolutely not. I'm saying that. But for those of you who do, go ahead, Ross, and give your 3 points to that would indicate that someone's got issues and problems. And we're going to talk in the second hour about everything people can do. But I think in the first hour it's critical, Doug, that we lay out all of the events transpiring so that people don't have to worry about getting an alert. We're trying to give enough data. We're trying to give enough understanding to everyone so they'll know when it's on themselves. So go ahead, Rod. Talk about, login, all the stuff that, you would recommend people do just as this thing is underway. And my understanding in emailing you and talking to you on the phone is that basically the DNS denial of service attacks have increased dramatically. Is that not the case?
Oh, very much so. And they do, on the weekends when the staffing is lower, they know the bank staffing is lower, so they just pound the banks over the weekend, starting on a Friday afternoon and all the way through Monday mornings, and then off and on over the course of the week. So it's just, you'll be calm, and then suddenly there'll just be a flash of them, and you can just see it and they can trace where it's coming from, but recognizing that some are spoofed. But having said that, the normal user, many of your people use online banking, and I do myself, but there's some precautions you should make. And having access, real-time access to see what your money what your balances are and what's cleared and things is a great technology. You just have to be able to safely use it, and I'm going to tell you how to do that right now. So everybody that has a login account or online account with whether it's Chase or BO, Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Cap One or BB&T, whoever it may be across the country. And even if you're overseas, you have the same capability, whether you're in the UK or whether you're in Australia or wherever you're from. You need to log into your account daily, at least once every day, just to look at your balance, make sure it doesn't look out of whack, and then you see changes from day to day. And having said that, if you see something that suddenly you had $10,000 in an account and suddenly it's at 9, you need to find out why that's happening. And because if you don't do that, you may go a week or two, and it may go from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 if nobody's raising a flag. People are going to continue to siphon it off. So everybody needs to look at their online account every day. And having said that, you need to change your password frequently, and you need to make it, even though you maybe have to write it down inside your home, you need to make it so that's not something somebody could figure out easily. You need to include upper and lowercase letters. You need to include special characters. You almost make it like it's gobbledygook, so that it can't be just suddenly it's not your child's name plus 2 numbers, or it's not your wedding anniversary or anything like that. You need to make sure that it's as convoluted as possible, and of course you probably have to write it down. You won't be able to remember it, but you need to do that so that somebody else can't figure it out. But I'm bigger concerned from somebody actually getting a hold of your credentials is from the inside and the money getting siphoned off without the bank knowing it. So they have a lot of things in place, and I have to give them some credit because they do have a lot of security, and it's on top of the heads of everybody in the banks, because if money gets siphoned off of your account without them knowing it, they're on the hook for it. So check your account every day, at least a quick scan in the morning or in the evening, whichever you want to do, just to make sure that it looks right. Then if you receive notices from the bank by email, or if you get a voicemail or a text saying your things have been compromised, you need to call the bank and make sure. Many times if you're doing some transactions with your debit card or your credit card, you may get a notice saying, please call us because we think there's some fraudulent accounts. If they give you the bank number, then you should respond to that. If they tell you, well, you need to log into this website and give us all your information, you need to know that somebody is phishing. That's with a PH. Someone's phishing for your information, and you don't want to ever do that. So if you have any questions on your balance or you get some kind of email or text, you need to notify your bank right away that you're getting phished, and then they can trace that down as well. And finally, this is just a personal preference, but everybody needs to keep some cash on them at all times. Don't rely on your debit card or your credit card to get you wherever you're going to go. Because if this cyber 9/11 actually happens, you won't be able to use your debit card or your credit card or any of those things. Most stores won't be able to take cash only, and which is ironic since the powers that be are trying to get cash out of our system. So, but just recognize you need to have a minimum of that to fill your tank, put your car with gas, buy a bag of groceries, get milk, things like that. I'm not going to tell you how much I keep in my house simply for security purposes, but you need to keep at least a couple $100 probably if you can afford it. If it's only $20, more power to you, just as long as you have enough to take care of your family during this outage. And the outage could last 4 hours, the outage could last 8 hours, and if they have their way, it could last days and weeks. So that's where the state of where we are today, and everybody just has to be due diligent for themselves as well as their neighbors. And actually, if something does go down like this and your neighbor is wanting, I would suggest that you would help them out. So again, it's coming, it's there. You just need to be prepared, just like you are for hurricane season or something like that. You just need to be ready.
Ross, Steve, if I can ask this question, Ross.
Sure.
Who exactly is the enemy inside the gate? In other words, the mole inside the bank. Is this a cabal or a consortium of foreign nationals, or is this globalists, or can you identify for me the enemy?
From my sources, it's generally terrorist organizations that have created what used to be called back in the 60s sleeper cells. I mean, those things still exist, and people are groomed to get inside here to get hired, and then they work their way up and they get the access that they need. And so many people believe they are terrorist organizations that are trying to make a big deal. I mean, even ISIS bragged online that they were going to have a cyber attack in London, and they're going to be doing some other things around the world. So, but you have those groups, but you also have some anarchists that are, anonymous, and a few others that want to expose things and prove their power. So who the exact enemy is, it could be a litany of different folks. It could be even retaliation from North Korea. It could be Iranians messing with us. It could be the Russians, the Chinese. But generally they have a footprint that our security services can figure out, and they've, through diplomatic channels, work through that. But these rogue groups of terrorists like ISIS and others have loyalty to no one except themselves, and so they try to recruit people to get inside and try to break in. So
Understood.
If the head of IT for one large commercial bank, consumer bank I'm affiliated with, that I know of, the person, if he's that concerned, then I know, and he doesn't get rattled very easily. He's seen a lot of stuff. And if he's concerned, then we all should be concerned.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I want to take it one step further. I think that most people need to understand that this is the plot, the plan, the blueprint for the communist, and I'm saying the word, communist overthrow and revolution in the United States. I would say this, that if you understand that every terrorist organization is funded and controlled by someone, then it goes deeper than just, the Russian mafia or whatever. The idea of bringing this country to its knees financially is one of the prerequisites that is driving Jade Helm now. But remember this, when, who was it, Doug, that said, never let a good crisis go to waste? Was that Rahm Emanuel?
Yes, sir.
I believe it was. But here's what, again, people, we're praying we get through tonight. The idea of crashing the cyber systems, the security systems, and everything else, the A doesn't know what B does. The bankers sometimes are kept out of the loop because the world's elite operate on a basis of pretty much staying hidden. The main names are not just, quote, the ones everybody wants to blame, but there is a secret cabal of what I call the Egyptian Brotherhood / priesthood. I'm talking about guys that I do not believe are just normal. I believe there's a supernatural element to it. So understand this. In the New World Order's scheme of things in their blueprint, they have a motto, order ad chaos. If you lock out everyone out of their accounts, I'm just going to ask everyone to think about it. Think about what you would do if tonight were Friday, or even tonight's what, Wednesday? Are we Wednesday or Thursday yet? We're Wednesday. And tomorrow you went to your online banking And again, I want to make clear, I don't use it. I'm just saying I'm trying to be consistent with my position. A convenience is, I believe, the ultimate bait for the ultimate trap. So I'll just make that statement and go on. Imagine you go to your account if it's online, or you go on the headline news or wherever you get your news, Drudge front page. The United States undergoes massive cyber attack, banks shut down, or banks undergoing massive cyber attack. Well, obviously, everybody's going to run to their bank as quickly as possible. Now, the golden rule that I have used in providing survival advice and prepper advice, is you want to be where everyone else isn't. In order to deal with risk, you have to deal with the area that you're most vulnerable in first and foremost. And I would say that the area that everyone is first and foremost most vulnerable in is basically their financial wherewithal or lack thereof. The idea that a cyber attack, we've already been told, and Ross, you've laid that out, and we've talked about that before, we'll address it a little later, but as the people who are in the IT departments are doing their best to keep out, let's say, the left-hand guys, the right-hand guys are controlled by the world's most powerful people, and they've got back doors that people don't even know exist. So the idea is this, that terrorism is funded by the people in the shadows. The people in the shadows want to abscond with everyone's finances. By absconding with everyone's finances, they then therefore throw this country into a state, a fit, an upheaval. And one of the things that people don't understand, I think, Ross, you need to really spell this out for people. After the first of the year, we have moved from a nation of banking where when you put your money in the bank, it was your money. And if that bank failed, the FDIC would cover it, or the bank that the FDIC would set up to buy out the failing bank would cover it. That no longer exists due to all of the new laws passed after the first year. And let me give you a simple illustration, and Ross, I want you to address it. If there are 100 people, and each one of them have $1 million in their account, so that's $100 million, and the bank uses that $100 million and loses $50 million, each one of those 100 depositors is now responsible for the loss. As you've seen the war on cash, it's also taking place from the standpoint of you're going to have to pay the bankers to put your money in their bank. What's wrong with that picture? So, Ross, based on what you know, what is wrong with that? Because the point being is they have redefined the difference between a secured depositor and an unsecured lender. You better make it, if you would, clear to people that that's a big deal.
Absolutely it is. I mean, the Dodd-Frank legislation is called the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, H.R. 4173, back in 2010, changed a lot of rules. I mean, some of the legislation was good for protecting consumers. However, it changed the definition of what a depositor is. And your bank of your parents and your grandparents and their parents, and even us, I'm not going to say my age, but even us into the 80s and 90s, a depositor was where you put your money in the bank. It's for safe there. Nobody's going to rob you, and you made some interest on your savings account and your checking account. You were a depositor. The bank took your money in, they loaned it out to other people, and they paid interest, and the bank made money on that spread. Today, the banks are so into risk in the derivatives and subprime loans and all these very risky, high-stake types of investments in order to increase their bottom lines, because the feds have started squeezing the way that you can collect fees and things of that nature. So the bank is looking for new ways to make money. And so it's not a neighborhood goodwill. A bank is not a neighborhood goodwill person. They are there to make money and make lots of it for their stockholders. So with the Dodd-Frank legislation, the left hand was shaking at you as the shiny object to say, look, we're going to protect you. Look at all these new consumer protections. The right hand was sticking their hand in their pocket and saying, oh, guess what? You're not a depositor. You are an unsecured creditor to the bank, which means that you are subjugated below the higher stature or people that are higher on the food chain within the investment banking world. So the whole idea, many people have heard of the word bail-in. That bail-in, you might as well put bail-in Powell or bail-in Quayle or bail-in Hagmann, because that's you. And they will give everybody a haircut of a certain percentage, as the people in Cyprus, as the people in Iceland, as the people in Greece. They're all seeing that they're getting these haircuts, and it ranges between 10 and 20%. And so one day you have $1,000 in your savings account, and suddenly you have $900 because you had to help keep the bank solvent. And the FDIC does not have the money to cover all of these banking losses. So they're spreading the risk and spreading the loss to the people that are putting their money in the bank. Am I saying you should pull every dollar out of the bank? I don't know if you could exist that way, especially with the way the laws are coming in the future with cash and how much is being looked upon under over $2,000, and they look at you like you're a criminal. So you need to somehow balance that, and hopefully tonight we can share some strategies to help you with that. But at the end of the day, and after a long answer, Steve, the Dodd-Frank Reform Act made everybody creditors and not depositors, so everybody's on the hook for their bank's losses.
And Steve, if I can just take this one step further.
Yeah, absolutely, Doug.
I was doing, Ross, I was doing some research on this today, okay, and basically it's my understanding that the Dodd-Frank Act did, in fact, made those changes. The changes came into play at the beginning of the year, but part and parcel to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Federal Budget Act of 2015 had an 85-line provision that was written in its entirety by bank lobbyists at Citigroup, Jamie Dimon in particular, that really drove this home. Is that correct? I mean, can we look at Jamie Dimon, for example, and say he's the guy, he's the man that's behind this, making us creditors?
I don't think you can actually lay it on one person's feet. I don't think you can do that. However, he is instrumental. I mean, he's the most powerful banker in the world. He's been labeled that, and he is a very smart man. I have to hats off to him. He is a very smart man. He was going to be the Treasury Secretary. At one point, he was on the short list. So, yes, I'm sure he has great influence into that, but he definitely is a big player there. But I don't know that you could lay it all at his feet. But all of the heads of all of the major top 5 banks would have input into that, and the Bankers Association and all of that would have input.
Okay, and the last thing, very quickly, I just want to say that in our attempts to get a mortgage for our studio and to move fast, I up close and personal experienced the ramifications of the Dodd-Frank Act. I had what I believe was a financial colonoscopy done on me and Joe and I in our business. It's as if the Dodd-Frank Act or the collateral damage from that it was created to stifle any type of growth. I mean, it's almost impossible. The hurdles thrown against the average person to get ahead or to buy a studio. It's almost impossible. To combine that with the criminalization of cash, you can't even. If you're fortunate enough to have $5,000, we'll say, to put toward the deposit for a commercial building, you can't do that because they want to know where the $5,000 just came from. And if you say, well, I saved it, for the last 5 years, no, we're not going to take it because that could be laundered money. Yeah, it's just insane to me. I'm sorry. I just want to drive that point home. It's crazy to me.
Well, right. I don't disagree. I mean, it's the equivalent of Abu Ghraib treatment for the average person trying to get a loan. I mean, stand you on cold tile and strip you naked. And that's what it really feels like when you go through trying to get a loan and to look at every little thing. But what that is an overreaction to the previous style of doing business was what you just stated what your income is. There was no verification. You say, oh, I actually make $300,000 as a clerk at a 7-Eleven, and they would accept it, and then they would loan you the money. I mean, I know several case studies where people I know worked for the same bank I did. They were in a fairly low-paying job. I wouldn't say low, but I mean they made $30,000 or $40,000 a year for what they did, and they went to apply for a $550,000 mortgage. They went to a mortgage broker, and they put their real numbers on there, and the mortgage broker said, "Oh no, you can't put. They need to put $450,000 because you're a team manager at a bank." They said okay, and the banks loaned them $550,000. Then the bottom fell out. They fortunately were able to sell their house before that happened, but had they not, the bank would have been on the hook for $500,000, and conceivably those people could have been prosecuted for mortgage fraud. It wasn't their necessarily doing, other than a sin of commission. I mean, a sin of actually just acquiescence. It was the mortgage broker trying to push it and trying to, he gets paid on the mortgage amount. So this whole Dodd-Frank, this whole thing of you going through the double-digit exam that you had to go through to get your loan is all based on, because this pendulum always swings 180 degrees to the other direction of where it was before when you're dealing with the government.
Gotcha.
So I feel for you, and you're not alone. I mean, your credit scores and all of these things, it's making it very difficult for millennials especially to get loans, and that's why this country is becoming a 50% rental group, country, because nobody can buy a home. The American dream of owning a home is unreachable for many people. So that's why, and this is exactly why, because they made it so difficult because of the previous sins.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Steve. And Steve, I think you muted yourself accidentally there.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to cut off any kind of feedback. By the way, is my volume okay right now?
Super. Absolutely.
Okay. Right now, Ross, as we're on the air, I'm getting some emails coming in from one of my intercessor friends, and cyber thieves eyeing your bank balance. Just last year alone, 2.2 billion malicious attacks took place. 40% came for Russia alone, U.S. 39%, and the balances other nations, China. But what they're claiming is that over $1 billion, that's 1,000 million, has been stolen. What the banks don't admit to, Doug, and to all the brothers and sisters out there listening, is the fact that they pay ransom secretly because they have their capital requirements. There's a whole list of things they've got to maintain. So the last thing anybody wants to know is Bank A, that's one of the top five, just paid, let's say, $100 million ransom. So one of the biggest things going on is that we're talking about this stuff, and as we're talking on the radio tonight, which is, for the record, May 13th, there are ongoing DNS attacks all over, and we're also seeing that basically they're claiming that Russian hackers, this is coming from Softpedia, are caught preparing large attack against financial institutions. Now, let me make this clear to everybody. We are at war. We are at war on so many fronts. The United States government is at war with its people. The Russians are tired of NATO and basically the U.S. initiating issues in the Ukraine. We all heard the State Department's lady spokesman saying that basically they started this whole thing. The peace when there is no peace. It's fascinating because what we're seeing now, and this is something that people don't understand, in the world of war, as I've read von Clausewitz on war, and I've had some really good tutors who are multi-star generals teach me how it works, but in anti-satellite warfare, the first thing that's going to come under attack are the eyes in the skies. We use satellites for communications. We use them for surveillance. We use them for controlling the troops. So people need to have indicators. What is there? And I will be blunt with you. And again, I speak for myself. Ross speaks for himself. But I would be terrified. I think the safest thing to have online banking. I understand convenience. If you want to, stay with your online banking, somebody will send me an email. Who are you to tell me to do that? I'm nobody to tell you to do that. I'm telling you that cyber attacks are escalating dramatically. And by the way, this is one of the things that the Russians have basically planned, and we got caught with our pants down. Now it seems like all the cyber attacks that are coming from the U.S. are being aimed at the alternative media. So, ladies and gentlemen, we don't get the privilege of talking like this much more in the future. And so the point that you've got to do is you've got to take control of your own money. I over the years of being in the precious metals business, Ross, and Doug and Joe, I'll share something with you. The thing that I've noticed the most is people will not take control of their funds because, number one, even people with great sums of money, to the majority that I've talked to over 25 years, and that's how long I've been in the precious metals business, longer than that, they don't want the responsibility for their own money. And so when you have that attitude, somebody will come in and say, I'll take your money. And again, this is why it becomes imperative that, well, the whole world of cyber attack, cyber assault, cyber warfare is geared against you. You have to become a hunter warrior in the way of protecting what you already have, capital preservation, and also you need to go on the offensive, and you can no longer sit back, think that somehow, you work hard, you put your money or it's deposited automatically in your account, and you're safe. That's absolutely the worst and most deadly assumption in the world. Now someone will say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Fine. You obviously know that you've been warned, and you've been warned and warned and warned. So tonight we're going to give you in the second hour some practical things you can do. But I think it's important, ladies and gentlemen, because, when all of the different partnerships and trade agreements and tariff agreements, whether it was GATT, General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, NAFTA, North American Free Trade Association. By the way, Ross Perot, and I won't go into great detail, but Ross Perot and his entire family were threatened that if he didn't pull out of the election, they'd all be murdered. I actually interviewed the man, I don't know how many years ago, but it must have been 7 or 8 years ago, that had a get out of free, he was a man who was given a presidential letter and a get out of jail free card. He was going to be the assassin, former intelligence guy. I brought him on the radio. I won't tell his name. Obviously, I know it. And because he said, no one will believe this, Steve, he did send me a copy. And unfortunately, Doug, I've moved. I had boxes of stuff shredded. I had, I think, 10 or 12 file cabinets, and that's gone. But, he's now resurfaced and special forces guy. So people have got to understand this is the dirtiest business in the world. It was Rothschild that said, give me control of a nation's money or a currency, and I care not who writes its laws. I came along and said this. I'm not in the same category, but I just said, he who controls the money controls your life. And, you've heard derivations of this statement, but this is one I wrote down today. You can ignore the facts, but you can't ignore the ramifications as they unfold before your eyes. So here's the deal. We live in such a state of denial. We live in such a state of mind-numbedness and total dumbness. I watched a lady today literally driving down the highway in the fast lane, probably doing 35 and everybody's doing 60, literally absorbed in, I never saw her head come up from, reading her text messages. Saw another guy walk into traffic the other day downtown Bozeman. Bozeman's notorious. Basically, our crosswalks become targets of opportunity. So I literally watched that happen. And what I'm saying tonight is I'm praying for everyone who's listening to us to get it, to absolutely get it. Now, let's just talk about the secrecy, Ross, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Share what's going on from your position and what you know has been told you from your background people.
Well, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is touted as being the greatest thing since NAFTA, and NAFTA wasn't all that great. NAFTA lost us hundreds of thousands of jobs, thousands of factories, and ruined a lot of people's lives, and not to mention billions upon billions of dollars of trade deficits. So if this one's magnitude greater than that, I'm really not looking forward to it too much. So it's shrouded in secrecy. Even the congressmen and senators have to go to a special room to view it section by section. Somebody sits in the room and watches them read it. They can't take notes. If they do, they have to turn them in and they're shredded. They're sworn to secrecy, and if they tell anybody what's part of it, then they could be put in jail and cited for contempt. If this is the most transparent regime that we're ever supposed to have, then this doesn't smell right. And so you have my people that I'm listening to said, they're concerned, does it have gun confiscation to part of the UN's small arms deal in it? Does it have the devaluation of the dollar or the replacement of the dollar? Does it include, how does it affect Jade Helm? Is that part of it? Because some things will come out. And there are even, I read over the weekend, there are companies that are selling stocks, or I guess you would call them puts, where you buy it for a penny, and if the Trans-Pacific Partnership actually gets approved by July 1st, they'll pay you $1. Otherwise, you will lose money. So there is more than that's seen by the eye, and my folks are telling me that it's not a good thing, because you see the political spectrum is completely on its head. You have Republicans supporting it, Democrats filibustering it yesterday. The judge had it as if it was dead. Now, 10 minutes before the show came on, now they're saying it's back live again because Harry Reid got what he wanted to vote on. So you have people in the Democratic Party actually embarrassing Cesar Obama and getting him all upset, and them threatening folks and just calling him all kinds of names in public speeches yesterday. So there's a huge political turmoil going on, so there must be something to do with jobs that has to do with our way of life, the dollar. All of these things are involved, and nobody really knows except the president and his trade group, and everybody's sworn to secrecy. They use it under the caveat of, well, we can't bring it public because if we tell Japan what we're doing with China or with Singapore or with other, they'll want the same deal. Well, then somebody's not being a good trade partner to me. So there's something is rotten in Denmark, to quote Shakespeare. So something is not right. And my folks just tell me that you need to be concerned about gun confiscation, or maybe as simple as registration. It could be elimination of assault rifles or alleged assault rifles like AR-15s. All of these things which would make you think, okay, what are they doing that's going to get the public so upset that they have to station all of this equipment around the country under the auspices of Jade Helm and say, don't worry about it, nothing to see here, move along. It's like these aren't the droids you're looking for type of thing, Jedi mind trick of Star Wars. And unfortunately, we don't fall for that. And so there's something dreadfully wrong. And if this thing comes to fruition in July, the reason I said these puts or these bets that they're placing for July 1st, because it directly coincides with Jade Helm. Again, as an intelligence officer in my background, I build this tapestry of information, and as you weave it all together, the threads blend and build a picture for you. So these things, taken individual stories at a time, wouldn't tell me anything. But you put them all again, and you see their tangential relationships, and you see how they all can interweave. It makes you just understand that it is not what it says it's going to be. And what is the timing? Why are there bets for July 1st? Why is Jade Helm July 15th? Why are what is all the immediacy of giving the president Cesar Obama, giving him the power to just have fast track and do whatever he wants? So without congressional oversight and without congressional having to vote on it. So are we making amendments? So these kind of things just trigger my spiritual insight and go, this is just not right. My spirit is all turned upside down over the last couple of weeks because of this. And the more I research it, the more I see that the things are coming to pass. And just as we talked about in April show of April 2nd, many of the things that we talked about are coming to pass there as well. So when we get to that, we can talk through that. But Steve, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is not a good thing for the average American. I can just tell you that. If it was, they would be singing it. They would be singing it from the West Wing in the balcony, screaming it like the Pope is giving his Easter homily.
Well, one of the things too that everyone should be upset about, to the point of being incredulous, and literally there should be a massive recall petition to every congressman and senator. You probably saw, Russ, Doug, and Joe, the fact that they claim that they cannot be charged now. They want to put a bill through that they are exempt from insider trading. This is such the fall of Rome. The Roman Senate, I'll say this, the United States Senate, the United States House of Representatives is as debauched as Rome was shortly before its fall. Just as the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, all of the different barbarians that ultimately took down Rome, obviously the church in the east, Constantinople, formed by Constantine, but we are seeing the total abrogation of law by those we elect to supposedly protect us from unjust laws. There is a dictatorship. It's already in the making. And by the way, I don't know if you saw this, Ross, and I don't know if you saw this, Doug and Joe, but another Morgan Stanley trader in Lake Ontario near Toronto's beach. And so, one of the things, calls buzz in while I'm on the radio. I can't shut that off. But it says this: police are awaiting the autopsy of Murray Abbott, and guess what his specialty was, okay? Now, what does this tell you, Ross Powell? Abbott was a vice president of the Capital Markets Group of Morgan Stanley's Canadian Wealth Management Division. When they whack somebody that is that big, you've got to understand, by knowing the division that they were over can lead you in the direction of who wanted them silenced. Are you aware of that death at all, Russ?
Yeah, I saw that right before coming onto the show, and again, capital markets, somebody that's involved in probably in the derivatives market, probably discovered some things. There's all kinds of things going on in the derivative markets that he may have come across something or made a bad trade or did something, and he was probably whacked for it. Since, again, he was either going to blow the whistle or he made such an egregious mistake that they said, well, you're done.
Well, again, it's
if you're
the
in
long
asset management, you're probably in derivatives.
Yep. So derivatives is the biggest bubble in the world. And what's critical, Doug, for people to understand, and this is the thing, Ross, maybe you can say it clearer than I can, because I guess there are some who really get it. But when you have money in the bank, there is no money in the bank. You have electrons and you have photons on a cathode ray tube or whatever, the LED tube. There is no money. It is a functional cyber currency now. And because of, once you take cash out of the hands of people, you've divorced them from real money totally. And now they're in the quantum crook category. Now, that's my new term, Doug. That's a new Quayleism, as Hawk would call it, quantum crooks. Because if you notice everything, cyber this, cyber that, Bitcoin this, Batcoin that, the point that is so tragic is that Americans are literally selling their birthright out for a illusory promise of something that's based on nothing and giving up their somethings to do so. So what's critical is this, is that give me control of a nation's money and I care not who writes its laws. Those who control the nation's money, all you had to do is watch Goldman Sachs and what was the guy's name? The former head of it, Hank, what was his name?
Hank
Paulson. Yeah. Basically threatening the Congress, the United States Congress, and the entire government if the government didn't back up their losses, that they put the country under martial law. This is where the enigma lies. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, you have been vilified. If you're a patriot, hey, Ross, you're a former military guy. If you're a Christian, if you're a gun owner, if you're a veteran, if you're a homeschooler, if you're a constitutionalist, if you believe in the First Amendment, if you believe in any of the amendments, and especially the Bill of Rights, the point is there is such a great disconnect between what you see versus what you're being told. Let's take Jade Helm. There is no reason for United Nations troops to be in this country except for one, 7277, the disarmament of the entire American public. Michelle Obama made the statement, 2 weeks ago, that absolutely her husband's going to take away the guns. I'm tired of the rhetoric. Most people do not understand special warfare or basically the fact that every single neighborhood in the United States with every single gun owner identified has already been put into a matrix. In special operations they call it a kill box. So when I'm being told, you're being told that the American public's neighborhood is training for overseas, that is the biggest lie, and it's a damnable lie. It's a heretical lie. It's a murderous lie. It's out of the pit of hell. And how do you get people, Ross, this is rhetorical, Doug or Joe, to understand that when people are training from midnight to 4, those are the killing hours. The guy in the world of dark ops once told me, he said, remember this, we do all our dirty work in the night hours, in the waking hours, in the wee hours of the morning. We own the night, like NIGHT. So the point that I'm trying to make to everyone and to get across, I don't care what lying devil from hell goes into Bastrop, Texas, and he's with the military and looks over at his civilian handler, and he hasn't even read his own documents of Jade Helm. I don't care how many vomitous brokers from the pits and cauldrons of hell make fun of those of us who are trying to warn. There has never, and you know what, Ross, Doug and Joe, they will not address the major issue. Why have you called America's fighting men and women terrorists? Why have you called Christians terrorists? The Christians aren't cutting people's heads off. The Christians aren't burning children alive. The Christians aren't crucifying people. The Christians aren't saying surrender, we'll cut your head out or disembowel you or gut you or whatever, and yet not one word from the entities that control Washington, D.C. And when I say entities, I do not mean normal human beings. I mean people who have been taken over by absolute vomitous creatures from hell, and if that isn't as blunt as I can make it, I don't know what is. And yet not a word against the hundreds of thousands of Christians slaughtered. Do you really think, and this is rhetorical, guys, that basically this Jade Helm is just an exercise for overseas when the United Nations is bringing in vehicle after vehicle, when troops, foreign troops, whether they're Russian-speaking and ROTC, and this is the biggest point. I failed to make this. This is the second failure. The United Nations Security Council is made up of Russia and China. Gee, isn't it amazing that we're borrowing money from the Chinese, giving away all of our national treasures as collateral? They're buying us up lock, stock, and barrel. The Russians have supplied troops, crack troops and Spetsnaz at the request of the Department of Homeland Security. Some of the most outspoken, violent, and former violent Egyptian Brotherhood, all of the what we would formerly call terrorists, are now heading up some of the most top secret departments in the Department of Homeland Security, the Defense Department, intelligence agencies. The Secretary of State appears to be a Muslim, or so he appears. Hillary Clinton, crying poor, yet the foundation. I mean, when you see what they've shaken down, I would say this: they probably have shaken down more trees under their rule and reign of debauchery than anybody in the history of the world. I think even the international bankers should be pretty much surprised at how effective they were. I only say that to say this. I have never seen such denial, even in the patriot community, making excuses. And that's what infuriates me. Why is this important, Doug? Because it will be the idea of all these guys, meaning the guys that want everything. If you kill off 50 million people, who gets their stuff? There's a question for you, Doug. Who gets their stuff? Let's say 50 million people die. Who gets their stuff?
Well, the killers. I mean, the globalists, the Luciferian, bastards that schemed, plotted, planned, and did the deed. I mean, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. So the point is, okay, we're going to be plundered, but prior to that plundering, they're going to. Okay, Ross, let me ask you this. In the time of bank panics that you've been aware of that have been staved off or stalled, that really makes the bankers nervous. People don't get it, but the bankers are already being given 3-day, some 7-day emergency packs, being told they're going to stay in. I think it was the Chicago Fed that had its windows bricked up. And most people don't understand the Federal Reserve banks are basically, they are so secure. You have perimeters you got to breach to get into them. Sounds like I'm writing a novel. I'm not. But the point being is that they're all prepping. It's obvious. So once the cash goes, your ability to function outside of the system becomes based on barter only. And that, again, is why, later in the show, the second hour, we're going to talk to you. And I told Ross, I said, Ross, I believe this is the last time that we will be on the air talking about this, because this is, May 13th? We've got June 20th coming up. We've got all the issues with all the prophetic events taking place. We've got the status of Jade Helm taking place. Certainly people don't believe that they're going to wait until their date. We've already got operations going on in 40 states. And here maybe this will make it. People, somebody said there are no hearses with a U-Haul truck, or no hearses following a U-Haul trailer behind a hearse going to the graveyard. You've heard that, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. People act like that every day. In other words, here's what I'm trying to say, and then I'm going to turn it right over to you, Ross, and I want you to be as blunt and candid as you can be, because I assume, Doug, and I seriously do, I assume, and I've been wrong before on timing, could be wrong again, but never have we had the full focus and fury of cyber attacks being mentioned along with Jade Helm, as Ross just stated. And I think that you'd have to be dumb unto death, stuck on stupid, a fly in fly paper wrapped around your head, have your eyes covered, have your ears covered, have your fingers in cement and your feet in molten lava, to basically be that immobile not to act on your own behalf. It's just like, and we'll talk about this in the second half too, Ross will take the financial stuff and we'll get into the prepping thing. Right now, the greatest attack on America's food sources through drought, through famine, and disease have escalated to the point that people are not going to be able to eat as they used to, because simply the food's not going to be available. So Ross, give it to people plain and simple, as blunt as you can. I think we got 4 minutes before we take a break.
Sure. I want to go back to the banking and, excuse me, the fractional banking system, our fiat system, the fractional banking system, only requires the bank to have 10 cents on the dollar available to dole out. So if you have $1,000 in the bank, the bank actually only has 100 of that available to give you. So if everybody runs on the bank, they're going to stop you because they don't have that much money. So everything is a series of ratios. So a 10-to-1 ratio, and then they leverage that 100 times and then 1,000 times, and that's where you get to tens of billions of dollars in derivatives, are all based on maybe $1,000 in the bank. So everybody just sort of leverages up 10 times or 100 times. So people need to recognize that the money, especially when they see those numbers, those digits on their screen, yeah, you have those credits, but God forbid you try to get those credits, because they're not going to give them to you, because you are now a unsecured creditor. You're not a depositor, so they can tell you what you can or cannot have. And in the second hour, I'll go through a couple of stories on some of my customers most recently that tried to get just a few thousand out to do work on their farms, and they were denied it. So you need to recognize that the cash is going away, and if you have these digits and everything, if everything is a cryptocurrency or it's all digitized and you don't have cash and you can't use gold or silver for paying for bills, like you can't use cash in some banks to make your basic payments on your car or your student loan or your mortgage, you can't use cash for those anymore. You have to deposit it and then write a check or use a debit card. You have to recognize that those numbers could easily be devalued overnight, or they could be swept away by hackers, or they could be swept away by some nationalization. How many executive orders have we been privy to in the last 6, that just did things that we said, how the heck can he do that? And he just arbitrarily does it. They could easily just say, well, you know what, everybody has to pay by 10% with their pensions have to be bought in Treasury bills, or 20%, paying 3%. Everybody just has to do it. Too bad, so sad. So suddenly, which you're getting 20 or 30% of the market, or you have your money in metals, or you have it in real estate or whatever, suddenly your pension owner or plan administrator has to sweep 20% of that money into Treasury bills. If you think about it, there's $14 trillion worth of retirement money sitting in 401ks and IRAs right now. A 10% swag on that gives you a $1.4 trillion bonus to the government's coffers that they can squander at a moment's notice. Oh, next year we need another 10% and another 10%. So you need to take control of your money, and we're going to tell you how to do that in the second hour. But this fractional banking system is teetering because we've extended ourselves out so far. You can only stretch a rubber band so far until it breaks. The bungee cord only stretches so far before it smacks you in the face. So you need to recognize that the time is here. And I don't know how much blunter I could be, Steve. I mean, you need to recognize that you need to take control of your life and take control of your money because it may not be there tomorrow.
Right. We'll tell them how to do that through you in the next hour. Doug, go ahead and take the break, and we'll come back.
All right.
We'll take our quick break and get a quick word from our partners. You're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report tonight. Our guest is Mr. Ross Powell. His website, survival401k.com, and Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com. 13th, 2015. Again, our tonight, Ross Powell from survival401k.com and Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com. Steve, I'll turn it over to you. Start off the second hour.
Well, what we're going to experience, everyone, is a liquidity crisis. One of the most famous traders in the world, and he's on record. George Soros paid him $1 million for, I believe, one day to teach his traders how to trade in the commodity market. He's emailing me right now. God bless Lloyd. He said because of the negative interest rates in Switzerland and the withdrawal of cash from their banks, their central banks do not have enough money to make their daily repurchases with their banks. He then types in giant letters, shocking. Now, this is one of the smartest men in the world, and just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, he gave me his entire trading portfolio for 1 year. That's a pretty amazing and transparent man. And when he said he turned a little money into a lot of money, I literally followed his trades. And I mean, it was probably with no exaggeration, 2 inches tall, and from a major broker. So what he's saying is with the negative interest rates, this is another way of controlling the flow of cash. Give me control of a nation's money. I care not who writes its laws. Give me control of a nation's money, and I make the laws. I decide who lives and who dies. I'm adding to what was already stated. So anyway, what we're going to do now, Ross, explain to people what they can do and how they're up against the time limit, because Jade Helm, either way, either it goes live or it doesn't go live, and if we bought anything by buying a couple months of time by exposure, being in the Special Forces community and an intelligence agency, you know, is it not true when an operations cover gets blown, they have to reconfigure and they have to come at it a different way?
Right. It always pushes back their timeline, and they have to regroup, and they have those plans in place, but they have to regroup and reset and restart their overall game plan and start working their psychops and all those kind of things, and just kind of start boiling the frog again. So it resets the time clock for sure. So,
well, would you then, go ahead and explain, okay? A lot of people, it used to drive me crazy, and I figured there's a better way than saying I want to answer that question because, again, thank God I came into your contact, because when you have to have your money in a 401k or IRA or whatever defined benefits plan and you can't touch it, it violates the major premise of everything I believe. If you can't touch it, you don't own it. But explain what you've been able to do. And ladies and gentlemen, Ross has been able to help out better than a dozen of listeners of mine all over the country to get their 401k IRA controlled assets in their possession. So take as long as you need to explain to people what you do, because in essence there is a legal way to do it that you do not incur the penalties or taxes. Please, Ross, take it away.
Sure. So many people that are listening tonight have 401ks, or they have their IRAs or their Roth IRAs, and they're using that to save for a nest egg for their future. Some started early, some started late, some haven't started, and frankly they need to. However, the way the government organized these vehicles for you to save money tax-free or pre-tax dollars, for instance, so you can build your nest egg quickly, the rules are set for, he who has the gold makes the rules, is the old adage. And in this case, the Wall Street owns all the gold. That's why many of them are called Goldman Sachs. It's a play on words, but many of them of the investment group have Goldman Sachs of your money that they invest, and they make money on you. And so whether there's a litany of online brokers, I'm not going to mention all of them. There's lots of them. And you can easily set up a 401k with your employer, or you may have some left over for when you leave. But that money is trapped inside Wall Street. You can't touch it. You can't use it to pay for a wedding. You can't use it to fix your roof, any of those things, generally, unless your company may allow for a loan. Some do, some don't. So that money is basically in the pockets of the bankers and the traders until you turn 65 or 62, 65, 68, and they make you spend some of that money at 70 and a half because they know you're going to die soon anyway. So they've gotten their use out of you, and they're going to throw you into the urn. So what we've created with our company in concert with Checkbook IRA, along with our company, have devised a mechanism that allows you to move your money from Wall Street into your street, meaning that we have a vehicle that's a qualified plan called a solo 401k and a checkbook IRA that allows you to move your money from Wall Street to Main Street. And that means that you control the checkbook, you control what you invest in, and you have ultimate power as the trustee. So you can keep part of your money in Wall Street. You can buy precious metals, which I recommend for wealth preservation. You can buy rental properties stateside. You can buy rural properties. You can loan money. You can buy private equities, tax liens, foreclosures. You can flip houses. All of these things, but you need to have a baseline, and I recommend everybody get 15 to 25% of this money in precious metals at minimum, simply for capital preservation. Gold has been around for thousands of years, and it will continue to be that way. Now, I'm not a certified financial planner, so I can't tell you what stocks to buy, what properties to buy, or anything like that. All I can do is free your money from the Wall Street leg irons to freedom in your own account. And for those of you who are thinking of leaving the country, you can use your retirement funds to buy property in foreign countries, whether you want to go to Europe, South America, Central America, Estonia, Latvia, Vietnam, Cambodia, wherever you want to go. You can use your retirement money to buy those properties before you go, and then when you get there, if you want to live there, then you can take that as a distribution and pay the tax later. So with this mechanism, it's called a solo 401k, which is for self-employed people, and we can help you. If you're not now, we can actually help you determine if that's something you want to do. And once you are self-employed, we can open a plan, or you can do what's called a checkbook IRA, which is you move your IRA money to a new custodian, you create an LLC, and the LLC actually buys it for you. And both of these plans make it available for you to actually hold your gold and silver in your home, in a safe, not in a safety deposit box. You never want to do that. And most banks are prohibiting doing cash or coins in your safety deposit box simply because they don't want that liability. So what you need to do is open one of these plans, move your money out of Wall Street, or you can keep part of it in there. If you want that kind of growth engine and that kind of risk, you're welcome to do that. Our plan provides for both. But you can also move it into the items I mentioned, precious metals, hard assets like rental properties, real estate, all of those types of things you can actually hold in your plan, and you as a trustee determine it. You have a checkbook at a local bank. You stroke a check for metals with Steve. You stroke a check for a rental property. You stroke a check for whatever you want. And at the same time, you can still loan yourself up to $50,000 of your money, and you stroke yourself a check. You sign the promissory note. You pay yourself back at 3.25%. So this plan is available for everybody, whether you're self-employed or not. There's just two ways of going about doing it. So they both have, and we have many videos on our website at survival401k.com or checkbookira.com, and you can see all of the different avenues. We have a lot of car talks, sort of 2-minute talks that will tell you how to, just many different topics that will tell you all about it. And you can call us and we'd be glad to talk to you and listen to your story, listen to your goals, and we can find out a way to get you where you want to be. And this is going to make you very prepared. You can use the same monies for your prepping if you're so into that. So if you want to buy a rural property for a bug out community, you can do that. You can make improvements. You just can't live on it. You can't drill on it, but you can actually have it sitting there. You can buy weapons. You can buy food stores. You can buy, again, precious metals. There's a lot of things you can do as long as you don't use them on a daily basis so that you don't breach the law. And there's other things you cannot buy. You can't buy a Ming vase or a Picasso or a Persian rug or a Chinese rug, antique cars, anything that you would have to go to an auction for. You can't use this kind of money for that. But you can use it for tangible assets, and you can use it to stay in the stock market as well. So, Steve, it's very simple. It's a 5-day process to get you set up, and then it's from there we help to get you a bank account open, and we also help you get your money rolled out of Wall Street. So we're up to 30. We've actually helped 30 of your customers, Steve, and they're all very happy. And some of them are actually.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Russ.
No, I'm just saying I'm getting emails from your former customers just saying, thank you, you've really helped us out. They're listening tonight. So there are testimonials of people that have moved as little as $25,000 to people that have moved millions. So no amount is too small and no amount is too large. But, again, this is all about taking control of your money, freeing it from the greedy people that have it today and letting you take control of your life and getting prepared for what's ahead.
Doug, do you want to say anything before?
No. I just the only thing I want to say is I guess from what I'm hearing is Ross is actually I don't want to say it's kind of like the difference between tax evasion and tax what is that, tax evasion and tax avoidance? The difference is 5 years, as they say. In other words, what Ross is doing is you're working within the system. You're playing their game to our benefit, basically, is what you're doing.
Right. This is a tax law, and we have a letter from the IRS saying this is perfectly legal. And this came about in the majority of it came through in the tax changes in the year 2000. To help small businesses save for retirement because the government doesn't want everybody to be on the dole completely in Social Security and things like that. So they set this mechanism up because one of the people that were the worst at doing retirement planning were the self-employed because they're hunting for their breakfast every day. Some people make a lot of money, some don't, so they're eking out a living and doing what they have passion for. So they set this up for them to be a way to do that. And so this is it's a great opportunity, and it's way inside the law. There are court cases. We have hundreds of clients, and none of them have been audited. So again, we're not doing some magic potion and some 3-card Monty. This is all very legal, very mainstream. It's just that many people don't know about it, and it's a way to free their money. So many people are caught up in the trap of, well, this is how my father did it. He invested in the stock market forever, and he retired. Well, this is not your father or your mother's world. This is a whole new world.
This is not your father's world,
I would call it.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Steve. Thanks, buddy. Go ahead, sir.
Well, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, too, one of the critical issues that's before everyone is how to break out of the psychological paralysis and the news bias of continuing mocking. You know, the way to take away from the truth is continuing mock the truth. What was it? Tell the lie lie big enough. Hitler's attributed with the statement, or at least quoting the statement. I think it was Goering, the head of Luftwaffe, who said, "Thank God people don't think," and I believe that's literally true. But in his day and age, they didn't have all the mind control experiments, all the MK Ultra students of destruction. We're in a whole different world, but here's what it boils down to. You know, we're charged as Christians to take stewardship of our lives, and as someone who gets all the flack in the world, seemingly, I'm not feeling sorry for myself over, well, I just trust God. Well, you know, so did Noah, so did Joseph, and because the Christians in the New Testament book of Acts gave everything away, sold everything and had it in common, I don't think people understand this. Paul, in his missionary journeys, had to take collections from the Gentiles to bail out the people in Jerusalem that had sold everything and had everything in common. Did you know that?
No.
So here's the thing. It's stewardship. The parable of the 10 talents doesn't have to do with how well you sing in church, how well you write. It has to do with faithfulness. Jesus put it this way: be faithful with the unrighteous mammon, which is money, okay, so that when you receive the true riches, you'll be experienced as being faithful and productive. I've literally, Ross, talked to people that have given me a hard time over the years, and basically, said, well, I lost $400,000. I guess I'll have to work for a couple more years. Like I was going to retire at 60, now I'll have to work until I'm 85. And this is a literal case, okay? And the guy was bragging about how much money he lost, and that's hard to imagine. But when I really got down to it, by the way, I had spoken to the gentleman through his physician, and the guy just didn't want anything to do with the metals. In those days, guess what? Silver was $4, gold was $300. So, that $400,000, if he just basically locked it away, he would have been up, $2 million, okay? And the point that I'm trying to make to everyone is this, is that even the book of Daniel, the Antichrist will receive gold. And so when they say you're going to throw your gold and silver in the streets, well, let me share this with you. It'll be the UN troops, that you're doing that are coming in to take it away. That's during the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is when God pours out his wrath on the God-rejecting world. That's not the day of the devil's wrath. If the love of money is the root of all evil, and all evil is going to come to its fullest culmination in the personality of the Antichrist and all of the world leaders, and look at all the high-dollar millionaires and billionaires in Congress and in the Senate, you should get a picture of this. Ladies and gentlemen, what caused Rome to fall was when they lost track of the law and they lost track of the people. We're ripe for a revolution. Doug, I've been on talk radio for 25 years, and I'll be on Coast to Coast tomorrow night, by the grace of God, Lord willing. And the point, I guess, why I'm saying that is that I think it was, and there are people with better memories because they remember more shows I've done on Coast than I have, but a minimum of 15 years ago when I said this country's being directed towards a civil war. A civil war must be initiated because, remember, in order for, if look at any communist overthrows of any nations in the world, and guess what? They had revolution. It doesn't matter if the Weather Underground basically said in 1972, 30 million people have to die. That evidently didn't set in. You do the population, you're up to 100 million. Then when I broke the news on the Deagle story, and I'm the one that broke that news and went on Coast to Coast, went on Alex Jones. People said, that's just speculation. They came out and said how they arrived at their numbers. And so if you're looking at 2025 and your kids are 10 years old, that means by the time they're 20, chances are that 9/10 of the United States population will be gone. So what people have got to grasp is this, that the skull and crossbones, the Illuminati, if you will, the secret societies of Yale, the presidents who have marched under that banner, they're still doing the same thing as Blackbeard, Bluebeard, and all the pirates in history. They're just telling you point blank they're doing it to you in front of your eyes. It's the same thing with vaccines. I'm surprised that people would not challenge Fox. Here's an irony, and this is something I got to get off my chest. I'm forbidden, and I'm not forbidden, by the grace of God, I will not speak of Jesus. The point is that, yet you cannot speak of Jesus openly on Fox, yet now they've got a whole show coming, a network show on Fox that most, quote, conservatives get their news from that's about Lucifer. Did you see that, Ross?
I did.
Okay, and Doug, did you see that?
No, how did I miss that? No, I did not.
Okay, or Joe, did you see that?
No.
Okay, so understand this. Jesus is out, Lucifer is in, and he just so happens to own a nightclub. You can go look at it, Lucifer Trailer, okay? I wrestled with even putting it up on my website. I haven't. I don't think I will. But the point is, it's in your face. So here's the irony. You've got the literal Prince of Darkness. By the way, they don't have a problem with Lucifer being evil. He's been around for 9 billion years. This is what the trailer says. He owns a nightclub. He lives in the world of seduction, seducing others. But it bothers him now that he's starting to have feelings for the human race, where before all he wanted to do is destroy them. So basically, he's a fast-living playboy that destroys people's lives, blah, blah, blah. Okay, by the people that supposedly bring you the truth. I don't know, and I've said this to the living God in prayer, Lord God of heaven, how can it be so plain, yet your people be so incompetent, and they are, so impotent, and they are, the pulpit so corrupt, and they are, the Word of God so held in contempt, and it is, the name of Jesus, the Redeemer of the human race, the blood of the Lamb that makes my sin go away and gives me access to the King of glory, who God set up redemption on his terms. How is it that the majority of people that would probably claim to be evangelicals will go on Fox News, and yet Fox, the network, is basically giving the annunciation? I don't know how to speak Latin, Doug, maybe you do, but the premier annunciation, the ultimate annunciation that here's Lucifer, and he's really just a misunderstood, cherub, and he's going to change his ways. Well, I can tell you where that's headed. That's headed to ultimate reconciliation, because as the alien savior comes on the scene, and this has everything to do with your money, it will become more difficult for any believer to function. What Ross and I are talking about is this, and I said to Ross, Ross, I don't think they're going to wait until July 20th, and in worst case, September, the Vigoro hits the fan, okay? Those who don't know one thing from shoe polish, there used to be a statement, you don't know the word for excrement from shoe polish. Let me say this. The last thing you want to do is have your shoe polish on your shoes, it be thrown in the fan, and you spinning upside down, never knowing what hit you. I'm sorry for the bluntness, but that's where it's at. Where has the niceties gotten us, Doug? Joe? Ross? Where have the niceties talked? Everybody is so politically correct. And I want to say this, political correctness, I'll put it in Jesus' words, friendship with the world is enmity with God, You've either got to serve and love and obey him. Jesus said, if you love me, obey me, And I got to tell you, I think, Doug, I don't know, Ross, if you've seen it, but that lady who put out the two different prophetic, postings, that was on Rick Wiles' show, and I forget her name right now, but what was the most striking, upsetting thing, and I want everyone to check their hearts tonight, is this. When the Lord Jesus appeared to her and said, only 1 out of the 10 people who proclaim to know me do I know. Well, here it is, you guys, and how does this have to do with money? Simple. The love of money is the root of all evil, but it's also the unrighteous mammon that God gives us to be good stewards with to prove our faithfulness and other things. So the point is that if you're afraid to take control of your own future, you can't blame God. God is the God of the increase. He's not out. I mean, the Lord doesn't, tell A, B, and C. Pastor Langford told me to stay. I don't watch Christian TV because, number one, I think, what's on right now doesn't exemplify or lift up Jesus. It's just another way to sell you holy water, And when you got, 3 or 4 TV pastors selling holy water, it's probably coming out of a sink, and they're saying, bless those suckers, Now, somebody says, you shouldn't say that. Oh, yes, I should. And I'm tame. I should say a heck of a lot more than I'm saying. Because, look, there is no answer unless you take control of this. Ross, is it not your belief, based on what you know, that at some point all IRAs, 401ks, KIOs, defined benefit plans are going to be taken over because the debt of those just about matches the supposed false debt of the United States? Do you not believe that?
Right, that's what I meant, and that's what the My IRA is set up for people. That's just a slow movement, and that's what I'm saying. There could be easily an executive order stating that all pension plans, defined benefit plans, could be made to be made to invest in government bonds. It's instant cash for them. Then you suddenly have free debt because you're paying a pittance on the thing, and their people are required to do it. So you're essentially not just your tax dollars, but your savings will be given a haircut to push into government debt, which they will spend on things that you probably don't agree with. So that's absolutely coming, and the handwriting is on the wall. And the myira.gov is the first step, and we talked about that last month. It's only gaining traction. So many people think that that's what's coming, and so that's why we're pushing hard for people. Look, it's coming. You need to take control of your money, move it into another defined benefit plan with no taxes withdrawn, no penalties. It's just a straight transfer, and you control the money. There are responsibilities with great opportunity or great responsibilities. You have to control your money, invest it wisely, just like any other steward would be. But you don't bury it in the ground and get nothing for it. So you need to make sure that you do wise things with your money, not just sit there and think, oh, well, somebody else is going to take care of it. They're guaranteeing me 12%. Yeah, right. I mean, I talked to a gentleman today in a veterinary office, just taking my dog for a checkup. He looked at his IRA statement that he's had for 15 or 20 years, and he said, they said, this is what you did this quarter, this year, or whatever. Over the life of your IRA has had an annual return of 1.5%. Wow. And he was going to go buy gold and silver from one of those guys that advertise on talk radio that actually charge a 30% commission on the metals, and then they ship them off someplace where you can't touch them. I gave him my card and I said, whatever you do, don't buy from those people. Buy from this guy instead. Do not do that. So he was like, his eyes were like, I can't believe that this is the way it works. So that's what we're trying to implore people. Don't just take the status quo. Don't just believe everything everybody tells you. Do some research. Look around. Pray. Search your heart. You'll find the solution. And the solution is you taking control of it yourself, not expecting somebody else to do it for you. And there's plenty of tools to help you do that. So it's coming, and it's quicker than you think. And to the victor go the spoils at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Doug.
I mean, well, no, I fully, it's scripturally based, it's biblically based, it's biblically sound, and very good advice. And you're staying one step ahead of the globalist money changers, and I like that. And I think that's responsible to do because, I was thinking the other day, Steve, I mean, we toil, we work our entire lives, and with the hope of passing what we have managed to save and put aside to our children, and it's becoming more difficult to do that, but it's a responsible thing to do, and that's so we have to protect ourselves, protect what we've worked for, and like the scripture and the story in the Bible. As Ross just mentioned. So I totally agree with that. Can we get into the war on cash? I mean, or where do you want to go, Steve? Because I just really.
Well, yeah, I want Ross to address that from his banking background, from the people he's talking to. And Ross, start with the war on cash and then to go to Fed coin, which will become the federalized version of Bitcoin, if you would. So start on the war on cash.
Sure. I mean, even before the show started, I just stumbled upon another story on coming from the UK Telegraph, which is a very high, mainstream British newspaper online, and they're saying that they need to abolish make cash illegal to end the boom and bust of the cycles. So, what people have to understand about cash and how it affects the economy. So each one of those dollar bills, or $10 bill, or 20 or 50 or a C note, a $100 bill, says a Federal Reserve note. And what that means is that is a liability to the Federal Reserve. It has an intrinsic value of $1, albeit it's fiat, not backed by anything but your belief in the federal government. It's the reserve currency of the world, so they can print as much as they want to. But that hard cash makes it something that they can't change that. They can't devalue it, just say, tear that dollar bill in half, it's now worth 50%. It's still a dollar for dollar liability on their balance sheet. Now, if it's all digitized, if cash is not there and all you have is a debit card and they can say, well, we're going to start charging you 1% to keep your money in our bank, which they've already done to large institutional investors under the term of balance sheet maintenance, then why can't they do that to you? So now you're just a creditor and you're not a depositor, so they can treat their creditors however they want to. So now if all your money is digitized, what's to keep them from going, instead of going 1-0 to the right to inflate the money, why can't they go 1-0 to the left to deflate your savings and devalue the money? They could do that. So they could easily do that if you don't have cash in the world, because they can't trim off 10% of that dollar bill and say, now it's worth 90 cents. What they can do is then either, which other countries have done, turn in all your cash for this cash when they devalue a dollar or a currency collapses, like in Argentina or somewhere in South America. You can trade in those dollars, those currencies, for a new one, and you'll get a certain percentage on that dollar. Now that's something I just can't imagine them doing anytime soon. It's easier to digitize it and make it so that the cash is frowned upon. So as we mentioned earlier, by some banks not allowing you to pay cash for your car payment, your student loan payment, your mortgage, your private equity loan, your personal loan, any of those things, you can't do that because they can't trace where that money came from. And so just recently, one of my customers who did move close to $1 million between her and her husband from Wall Street to one of the big houses in Wall Street to their own local bank account in a small town in Texas, they went to go buy a cattle trailer for $4,000. They went to their small bank. It's got only has 12, mind you, 12 branches. Small bank, not even a regional bank, a small bank. They were told, no, you can't have that kind of money because we can't, even though they've had this account for 12 years for their farm, they said you can't prove that this account is your corporate farm account, even though they presented the paperwork 15 years ago, which has probably been purged because they're only required to keep that kind of stuff for 7 years. So they were like, well, we'll give you the money this time, but you have to bring your documents back in and prove this is where this money is going to. So they just couldn't take even a small sum of $4,000. They had to go. They could only get $1,000 on the weekend. Then they had to go back 2 more times to get another $1,500 each to get their $4,000 total. So they're clamping down, and anything over $2,000 is going to get scrutiny because they want to know, because they can't track it. And again, if you hoard money in your house to the tune of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, I mean, I have customers that have actually taken $30,000 and stashed it in a safe because they know that money is going to be there, and if inflation hits it, so be it. They know they have real money, and they can do it. Now, when you have the chief economist from Citibank, and you have one of the big leaders in the UK, and Denmark is now telling their vendors and merchants, you don't have to accept cash anymore. You can make them use a debit card. You don't have to, because now, if you don't accept cash, people look at you, well, what do you mean I can't accept cash? So countries around the world are saying, you don't have to accept cash, and we don't want you to use cash because, again, and granted, as a patriot, I don't want terrorists running and getting with drug money and cartels and running big amounts of cash to buy RPGs to shoot into our malls. But at the same time, you have to balance that with the freedom of the people. So it becomes more nefarious when you start taking the cash out of the system and making everything digitized. And you take it one step further. If you don't have cash and all you have is your debit card or your credit card or your ATM card, and the balloon goes up in the banking system and somehow they shut all of the processing down so where you can't actually use your card to swipe, all the systems are offline, then what are you going to do? So it creates a vacuum to where you have no place to turn. And when you have no place to turn and you lose hope, it turns into Ferguson and Baltimore and a litany of other towns in America that have no place to go. So that type of thing is almost like social engineering to make people turn on each other and on their neighbors. And that's why I said at the top of this show, you need to set aside a certain percentage for your neighbors that are not going to be prepared. And so with this cash to get, and I know I'm going long-winded on this, but the whole idea of cash is to keep you safe, and cash has always been king. Now they're saying digital is always king, and that will lead us to talk about FedCoin and things of that nature. So we need to know that there is a concerted effort by all the big banks, by all the Federal Reserve banks, by multiple governments around the world, including Europe and North America as well as Asia to bring cash out of the system and digitize it so it can be controlled and tracked. They can track every movement of every card that you use. So if I go to buy, let's say, 50 pounds of wheat and 50 pounds of oats and 50 pounds of rice to stick in my hoard so for hard times, if I use, let's say I buy all that for $25 or $30 and I give a 10 and a 20, nobody even knows it. But if I swipe my card at this feed store or at this maybe at a bishop's pantry in Utah or something, then they would be able to track me, everything I did. They could go back, what did I buy? They could petition the merchant to say what was on the receipt. They know exactly what you have. So that it all gets down to control as well as boosting earnings for the bankers and the Federal Reserve.
And Steve,
that's long-winded. I hope I hit your point, Steve.
Ross, thank you so much. And Steve, you've talked about this in the past, and now it's here. You've warned about it. Now it's here, and this is all about control. This is all about this great surveillance state, this government of wolves, as John Whitehead talks about this, where we are being subjugated and controlled, and as Ross just said, conditioned and subjugated. Bottom line here. But I just find it astounding that 15, 20 years ago, and I remember listening to you on Coast and on the radio, you saying that at some point, you're not going to have the freedom to spend money. Everything's going to be pretty much monitored. And here we are today. And once more, and I'll just say this very quickly, the process of us acquiring what we did acquire. I asked the question of an attorney when we were all said and done. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if hypothetically, if I had, for example, $5,000 in my mattress, and I wanted to take that $5,000 and put it toward the purchase or down payment of our real estate investment, would there be a problem with that? And he said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that because we don't know where that money came from, and you have to have it. There's got to be an audit trail. I said, so would you? And I got emails saying, well, why are you talking about that? Well, this is why. This is why we're here right now. And it I don't know. Steve, go ahead, sir.
Well, here's the deal. Again, the control of money. Let me tell people what's going to happen when this thing gets bad. It was tough for people to recognize when I spoke on your show. It was the first time I ever read that prophecy public that I'd given 4 years ago about God saying, I'm against the Pentagon and their their plans to make war on my people. It's on my website if people want to go and get that. Nobody ever said that. I couldn't have made that up. There's no way I could have known that. Yet God said, I'm against you. Now we find out that Christians are being vilified. They're being kicked out. Obviously, everyone knows that Christianity is out, and any form of religious worship apart from Jesus Christ is acceptable. Okay, that's God. So when God warns the nation continually over and over and over, and again, I want to make this clear, good stewardship is multiplied. I'm praying, I'm believing for those that have endured the most manipulated market in the world, the gold and silver market, that God gives them absolutely a supernatural return, and they can do with the bounty and the blessing on the metals as they see fit. It isn't lost, Doug, on me that the big five banks have worked secret deals out with the Chinese. Again, I stand on the record 25 years ago as stating, now why am I saying this? You shouldn't brag. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you. I didn't come on the scene after the fact. I guess that's not something good. I have a historic perspective and a matter of record that the Chinese would back the yuan with gold. It's becoming closer and closer to a reality. Do you think Russia and China acquiring 1,000 tons of gold in a given year, that they would do that if they thought gold was going to go down? But let's say this. Let's say you're the big five banks and you lost Chinese money, and I'm talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese money, and the Chinese come to you and say, we want our money back, and you say, but we don't have it. And they say, okay, We want you to drive the price of gold down. We want you to sell paper gold short, and then we want to be able to access the physical gold and silver. Ladies and gentlemen, it's no secret where all of the physical gold and silver are going, and I do believe that J.P. Morgan is building up its silver supply. You know, some people say they've got 500 million ounces. Today's price, that would be, 1.8 billion. If they've got a billion ounces, you know, that's 18 billion. So both Goldman and J.P. Morgan, they don't play for pennies. Imagine they anticipate this thing going up fivefold, tenfold. Then the numbers are overwhelming. I calculated, Ross, the current holdings at 30,000 metric tons. That's what I believe, and I do have access to people in China that have given me those numbers. I didn't pull them out any more than I pulled out the quadrillion-dollar derivative, and people just wouldn't believe it, Doug. You remember all the flack I got on that. 15 years ago, I said the derivatives were a quadrillion-dollar problem. Now people are just learning how much money that really is, 1,000 trillion. So the point being is that I believe it's been in God's mercy and his pleadings with this nation, the United States of America. I believe that as much as Anne Graham Lotz and people want to now call everybody to prayer and repentance, that's always good. I believe it's on a personal level. The Lord has judged America. It's too late now. I'll give you two words, judgment. Fukushima, drought. Look at the drought that's happening. So what Ross is saying is, even in your setting up a self-directed IRA, you can buy even storage food. Can you not, Ross?
You sure can. You sure can.
And so you can buy other things and hold it. And again, the idea is this: it's. Do you really think it's good stewardship to abandon all common sense, ye who enter here? Just kind of like on the river Styx, abandon hope, all ye who enter here, going to hell. The point being is if you knew someone was sitting around devising 1,000,001 or 1,000,000,001 or 1,000,000,001 to steal your money, wouldn't you think it would be good stewardship to protect yourself, to protect that which God has given to you to control? Because again, ladies and gentlemen, know ye not, know we not that we'll give account? I got news for you. That scripture puts the fear of God in my heart, especially when it comes to I got to give account for every idle word. Well, I have other words I've got to give account for, and I'm repenting over those. But you see, here's what's the problem. Sin is a power. It's not just an act. And that sin is what's directing, controlling. It is absolutely imprisoning God's people. It has distorted the biblical presentation of who the Redeemer of the universe is, the Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus is not on par with anybody else. And I would think this: if the Muslims have a hard time with people speaking against their prophet, they should at least not allow they should not be speaking against the prophet Jesus, who they call Isa. It's inconsistent. The point being is this, is that you have an administration, a military that is absolutely at war with the living God. It's not just the fact that they want your money. And oh, by the way, before they take your money, and this is the thing that I want to draw everyone attention who's ever heard Hawk speak. Hawk has a friend, deep intel, and that man heard in the clear a NATO general who spoke English. The absolute contempt he had for Americans and bragging about how stupid they are, because when everybody goes into FEMA prison camps, you really think your family heirlooms are going to stay in the family? Do you really think, somebody says, well, they'll take your precious metals away. Look, they're going to come for your life. You better make plans to protect both your life and your precious metals. People have become pacifists to the point of being fish in a barrel, okay? And my prayer is, again, that because of all the exposure on Jade Helm, if you know, and I want to make this clear, if you do not speak out against evil, you are a partaker of it. If you vote for those who openly embrace alternative lifestyles. God created marriage, man and woman. If you vote for that, if you vote for abortion, I guarantee you that you, unless you repent, you will give account. Even as a Christian, you won't lose your eternal salvation, but you'll lose your reward on faithfulness. And what does Jesus say? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into rest. And so I think the lack of accountability, Ross, Joe, and Doug, is probably one of the top 3 perplexing things I've looked at over 25 years being on talk radio. The day will come. It's coming very soon. And I told Ross this. Ross, you know, you're on borrowed time. I'm on borrowed time. You, Doug, and Joe are on borrowed time. I don't mean as far as your lives go, but as far as the effective ministry goes. Pastor Langford, basically getting the words of the Lord, the intercessors getting the words of the Lord. And, you know, if the trumpet doesn't sound a clear sound, how can the people rally? Well, I believe the trumpets of heaven are blasting. God's giving us neon signs. He's you know, and I've asked the Lord, I really now have an answer to my question. What more could you do to get people's attention that is already underway or taking place? If the precious metals just protect your purchasing power, and Ross, even the billionaires, Eric Sprott, and all the guys that are out there with the hugest balance sheets are strongly, Rick Rule, all these guys that have they're literally nine digits in their bank account. Even they said they have never seen the manipulation they've seen like they have, you know. And so, saying all that, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing. I was agreeing with you on a lot of things you're saying. But one thing I just want to stress is you taking personal ownership of your metals, which our plan provides. But beyond that, just the fact that having it, if you don't own it, if you can't touch it, you don't own it. I can give you a story from one of our customers who is a lieutenant colonel from that spent time in Afghanistan and in the Middle East. And he comes back and we ask him, why are you setting up this checkbook IRA? Why are you doing this? Same thing as a 401k. Why are you taking physical possession of this gold versus doing the typical gold paper or gold with a custodian? Why do you want to take on that extra responsibility? And he said, I've been overseas. I've seen how things change quickly. He goes, how easy would it be for there be an executive order out, saying we're going to seize all this gold that's in all of these places, and really, in all reality, 98% of the gold is in custodial care, is stuck in vaults all over the country. They could easily go after that 98% and have a nice payday and not have to chase that 2%. So it's like they can make an executive order and only take a platoon of Marines or 1 or 2 Marines on constant watch to seize all that gold in every one of those repositories. But they're not going to be able to come and chase every person in everybody's house who don't have the manpower to kick down your door, crack it open your Liberty safe, and take your gold out of there or your silver. So they're going to be going after the big fish where it's all sitting there like sitting ducks, and they'll just be able to back up their trucks, load it all in there, and take it and sell it to whatever they need to do with it. So under guard of federal troops. But they're not going to be able to get you the 2% or the 1% or the remnant, however you want to call it, that have the materials in their physical possession, and you can move it as quickly as you can around it. You can distribute it among relatives. You can put it anywhere you want to. I personally keep mine in a safe, because I think but when the time comes and I really feel like the fertilizer is going to hit the oscillator, I'm going to distribute it around to friends and relatives and make sure that it's not all in one place. So that being said, you take control of it, and somebody's not going to come in a thief in the night and suddenly you don't know it's coming, and suddenly you're caught there with your pants down. You'll already be prepared and ready to go. And the other 98% of people go, huh? How did that happen? Just like the people did it with on some of those large brokers that just failed. So all of their money was gone overnight, and their monies were pooled to pay back all the creditors or all the depositors. So the name of that failure is lost my mind right now. I can't.
MF Global.
Right,
John Corzine.
They took all the people's gold that were in these repositories that were part of the collateral. They took it all and pooled it into one big thing so they could pay back some people. So if you had $1 million in it, you may only get a pittance back. But everybody else got an equal share. So that's what could happen unless you control it yourself.
Right. I want to correct you on one thing, Ross. I never would have believed they'd come in the night, but the entire, from Navy SEALs to lieutenant generals, and I won't post some things, but I will speak of it publicly. I'm always at a dilemma. What to post, what not to post. I don't ever want to get anybody in trouble or worse, killed. But when I have a lieutenant general tell me that the whole purpose of this exercise at night is for the very express purpose of kicking in doors and basically killing the gun owners. Now understand, I'm talking a lieutenant general who got let go from the military because he wouldn't make his oath of allegiance. You understand that the military, and I said this, I said, you're going to watch the American military be decimated, okay? And obviously I know they don't like me. The ones that lost their jobs, I mean, they don't hate me, but the other ones do. So what I'm saying is this. When you're dealing with special operations, they're coming at night. When they tell the sheriff or the police, don't respond if you hear gunshots, and especially if you get 911 calls, I will say this. That is one hell of a neon sign. And look, I can say the word hell because it's a place, and people become more offended at that than our brothers, our little sisters in the Lord Jesus, our little brothers in the Lord, little children being burned alive. They won't even basically break a sweat over women being stoned to death, especially those hypocritical twits called feminists. And I said it, okay, and I'm calling them twits, especially when children and human beings are being butchered and beheaded and crucified. And I'm surprised the gay community isn't upset over all the gays that are being thrown off buildings, being entrapped sexually, and then being destroyed. I would think that would make Obama, basically have to at least step up to the pump and protect that which he's pushed for. But no, and so the point that I'm trying to make, and I'm not correcting you, but I'm just giving you additional information. According to the Lieutenant General, they are coming for whoever they see as leaders, whoever they see as someone that someone would rally against, and then the disturbing thing is that they're going to kill their families and everything. So the idea is this, and this is the billion-dollar question. Since when do I, as an American citizen, become the enemy because I value a certain thing called truth? Well, it's obvious. When you believe a lie and live in the kingdom of lies, then telling the truth is a revolutionary act. George Orwell, time of universal deception, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. But see, even the quotes from the New World Order guys, nothing gets people's attention. But the squawk factor is when they start to sweat personally. I said day one, once they shut the banks down, people say, well, it'll be better in the morning. I trust my government. They'll do something. Day two, they'll be gathering at the mailboxes, hoping for something, somewhere, someone to give them a little bit of encouragement. Day three, the power's out. Everything in their fridge is starting to rot, or in their freezer, because the power's out. Day four, the kids are getting hungry. What they used to eat, they no longer have access to. Day five, they know that, hey, all the bills are due, but since the power's down, I don't have to worry about those. Day six, the water's turned off. Maybe that goes off on day five, and by 1 week, it's total anarchy. I could be off a day or two, but that's what's going to happen, and that's what they want. So, Ross, we got 3 minutes, and thanks for being on for 2 hours. Give out your information, how people contact you.
Sure. You can reach us at survival401k.com or checkbookira.com. The number is 210-388-0777, or you can reach me on my cell at 210-639-7227. Again, the best way is to set an appointment on survival401k.com. Send us a contact form. Somebody will get back to you as soon as possible, and we'd be glad to help you. But time is of the essence because it takes time to get it done and get your money moved. So people shouldn't tarry because time is short.
Well, thank you, Ross Powell, and thanks so much for all of your information. And ladies and gentlemen, you've heard them, and time is short. You've got an actual deadline. You know, Ross, it's something that people have never had. They've had the indefinite unknown. Now they've got a deadline of July 20th, and that's if you expect those guys to tell the truth, you're already deceived. So we're at, what is it, May 15th or May 13th? You know, I'd encourage everybody to take this to the Lord in prayer and ask yourself, are you in any type of position to withstand the storm that's coming when your credit cards get locked down? This is not a fear statement or doom porn. This is the headlines today. You've heard Ross talking about the biggest banks. He's worked for two of them in the world, and they're worried about internal cyber assassins taking down the financial system. If an insider telling you that, you'll have no excuse. Ross, God bless you. Thank you. And Doug, my next guest for the third hour, calling in from Czechoslovakia. Mike says he can't get through. Go to your email, and it's a 420 number where he's trying to call in on.
All right. We'll take care of that, Joe. If you, I'm looking right at Joe here across the booth. If you can grab that, we will do what's necessary to bring him on, Steve. I too want to thank Mr. Ross Powell from it's
Survival 401.
Yeah, it's right on our website. As a matter of fact, if you go to HagmannHagmann.com, scroll down, Survival 401k is right on the right-hand side of our website, a link directly to Ross Powell's website. I'm sorry about that.
But no worries, and thank you for the time for having me on and give me an opportunity to tell people some truth. So I appreciate it. Steve and Joe.
Well, thank you, and Mr. Powell, you are very impressive, and thank you for being part of our extended family. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. All right.
We had Ross Powell on his website, survival401k.com, and I believe we have Michael from the Czech Republic calling in. Let's see. Michael, is this you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Man, you sound better. Yeah, you sound better, Michael, from the Czech Republic than I do from Montana. Well, listen, let me introduce you real quick, and then we've had Michael on before, and he's the head of Foremost Consulting. He's what you would call a headhunter, but he's got a military background, and I asked him to come on because I'm getting a lot of emails, Doug and Joe, from people that want to relocate to Europe. Not just everybody wants to go to South America. That's their own call. Michael's an American who lives in the Czech Republic. I always want to call it Czechoslovakia. But he's also a headhunter. So share what you're doing, Michael, and then we'll get in a little later in the show and talk about how you can help people relocate. But just share a little bit about, your blog and what you're finding out in you basically are a professional that helps people find jobs, and jobs are becoming more and more difficult to acquire. So just give a little background, and then I want you to, if you would, when you're comfortable, then I want you to segue, if you would, into telling people what it's like, what you're really facing when you decide, I'm going to live in Europe or South America, whatever, what you found from personal experience. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks, and it's great to speak with you all. Well, I'm a headhunter. I've been a headhunter since 1992, and I've seen a lot of changes. Half of my career was spent in Cary, North Carolina, where I conducted searches nationwide. In 2001, I had an opportunity to move to Europe and grabbed it, and I'll tell a little bit more about that when we segue. But I conduct direct searches. I've worked with people at all different levels, different marketplaces, and over that time, I've become an expert in the process of the interview and also how to find jobs. And right now, in one generation, in the digital era, everyone's forgotten how to find a job. If it's not point and click, people are absolutely lost and clueless. Anyone who hasn't looked for a job in the last 7 or 8 years would be scared to death to go out and interview. So what I do is I coach people. I teach them how to interview, the science of it, when you should talk about money, when you should not, how to close an interview, alternate ways of finding jobs. And I wrote a handbook. I have a blog because it was a way that I could help more people than to directly help them. So it is something that I do. I lecture college students. I have an outplacement program. It's better than the stuff that you usually hear about that is just about resumes and online activities because A resume, once you sit in front of an interviewer and he says, tell me about yourself, it's already outlived its usefulness, and then what are you going to do? So I won't get into this. It's a great topic for another time perhaps, but people can find me on my blog. They can find me on LinkedIn. And so enough of that. In 2000, I took a vacation to Prague. I wanted to see where my family came from. I'm second-generation Czech-American. And while I was here, I did what a lot of people do. I asked for a business card from the local office so I could go back and say, gee, this trip was a business trip. Yeah, that's right. And while here, I got a job offer. And at the time, my daughter was 15. I was a single parent. And I felt that the best gift I could ever give my daughter is living a couple years in Europe. So we'd take 2 years, leave North Carolina, come here, go back. After 1 year, I knew I wasn't going back. And I grew up with Czech traditions, so it was like living at Grandma's at Christmas all the time. So I made the change and moved over here.
Are you there still?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
and,
I'm sorry, there was a... Continue.
And so when I came here, I had to make a lot of changes, and I had to do a lot of paperwork. And so when people talk about relocating, it sounds like, well, you know, if I don't like it, I'll just pick up and I'll move. I'll go to Mexico. I'll go to Canada. However, with crises as they develop, there's something people need to recognize, and we're seeing it already, and that is that if something happens, the worst happens, doors will be closing to people that want to immigrate. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to speak with you, and I appreciate you inviting me, is trying to help people understand what all is involved. And also part of what I do is I provide a service. You know, I don't know how many people want to move to the Czech Republic. It's a country the size of Indiana. But it's a wonderful place, and I've done it. I know all the right people, so I know how to help people that want to come here, and I can advise them. And it is a service that I provide on my website. So ask me whatever questions you want. We'll get rolling with this on some of the things that are necessary.
First of all, give out your website because, you know, if you've got two. I know this, that I'm getting, Doug, Joe, and everyone listening, I'm getting so many requests from people that want to go, and I mean, if you want to go to South America, I can put you in contact there, but Michael has immigrated to the Czech Republic, and obviously where you go is a matter of direction and guidance. But first of all, what is your blog? Because there's a lot of people that are basically listening to me all over the world that are out of jobs, okay? And again, a lot of them are being punished because they're believers, okay? So let's do this. Let's take about 17 minutes and talk about what people are doing wrong. First of all, give us your blog where they can go and contact you if they're, you know, obviously your services are you know, you give general advice, but specific advice is on a rate basis. But your general advice, I learned so much from talking to you one day for about an hour that, I wouldn't know how to go and apply for a job. And I can't give people advice on two things. How to find a job, I don't know. I've been self-employed since 16, and I will give no marital advice, okay? That's for people who have way more understanding of the opposite sex than I do, okay? So I don't do those two things. But what's your blog, first of all? Let's talk about your blog in which, you know, you are a guy that people pay you money to go out and find them skilled employees.
First of all, my blog is Your Career Quest, altogether, yourcareerquest.blogspot.cz. Now, you can also find me by just entering my name, michaelmayer.com, which will take you to my primary website, and from there you can get to the blog as well. And my name is Michael, and then the last name is MAYHER.com. And that'll also help you find me. I'm also on LinkedIn. For example, most people now, when they look for a job, it's all online. Human resources has become less human than ever. You can't just walk into a company. It's very difficult. And I talk to people all the time, and they're so frustrated. They say, well, you know, I see the same jobs online. I apply. I never hear anything back. And I personally think that using Internet resources is a loser's game because it's a gateway. It's meant to restrict you. Human resources, they're meant to rule you out. For example, if there's a job you apply for and there's 100 other applicants, they're screening to get it down to 10 to send to the hiring manager so that he can interview 6, and then from there the interview process starts. So the problem is if you're just applying online and you're not getting anywhere, you got to find other ways. And I don't advise people do anything I haven't done or wouldn't do myself, and that's part of my military background with integrity. And so what I do is I teach people. I have an article every Monday that advises people on tips they can use. Let me put it this way. The people that I represent as a headhunter always do better in interviews because I coach them on every step of the way. I have a handbook that I wrote from the moment you start looking for a job until the time you have accepted an offer. I cover every step, start to finish. It's a small handbook. It's a no-brainer. There's a lot of good advice in it, and I promise you, I don't care how advanced an executive is, they don't know it all. I don't know it all, but I know a lot.
Let's talk about the big 3 critical mistakes. Now, if I understand you right, because I'm not kidding you, I get emails all week long of people that have been looking for jobs for years. I mean, I got guys that if I could hire them, I would. I mean, we're talking guys with PhDs. We're talking guys that are inventors. We're talking really bright, some fabulous writers. I posted a gold article, ladies and gentlemen. It's a PDF by one of my listeners that's probably one of the most succinct, well-done pieces, and he's not. I don't believe he needs a job, but the point being is that there are a lot of people. So let's go through the common mistakes because we can talk about the general mistakes, and then people because it's so frustrating. And what breaks my heart, it does. I'm sorry, I empathize that when people basically they lose their marriages over not being able to feed the family, they basically get seduced by the devil, meaning they either turn to drugs or drinking or whatever. And so this is a big deal for me because, again, we have largely a Christian audience worldwide. So understand, I think you know this, Michael, you're not just talking to Americans. You're talking to Australians. You're talking to people all over the world. New Zealand, you're talking to the Brits. You're talking to the Scots, to the Irish. I mean, every place in between, South America, South Africa. So let's run through, if you wouldn't mind, because this is critical. What are the biggest mistakes that people generally make? Now, you just made one, said, the Internet is basically a gateway to say no. Those are my words. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it is, because it's so restrictive. But some of the mistakes, I would say that it's abilities that have fallen short. People don't have soft skills anymore. They're scared to death of the word no. They're scared to actually talk to somebody. It's much easier to hide behind a computer. But at the same time, you got to be told no. I mean, we all learn to crawl before we learn to walk. And so, you got to get out there and you got to talk to people. Now, everyone will tell me, well, you have to have an electronic invitation if you're actually going to get invited to an interview anymore. And that is the trend. If you're in your local neighborhood, you can pick up the phone still. But if you're going to work for a company, you've got to get an invitation. And how you get that is where it gets difficult. And these are some finer points. But back to the basics, people's resumes. I advise people to have accomplishment-driven resumes. I have a lot of information in my handbook on resume mistakes, some of the most simple things. But I think the biggest mistake people make is that they feel that they're powerless. And so the whole basis of my handbook and everything I do is to help empower people, because if you have confidence, you're going to be much more comfortable going into a situation where you're going to be told no, possibly. But the mistakes, if you're looking at resume mistakes, the most common, spelling errors are the biggest mistakes. And why does it doesn't matter how good you are. If human resources has to whittle down to 100 and they find a spelling mistake, they toss it aside. For example, another thing, I think pictures on resumes are silly because it's a beauty contest, and I have seen human resource people actually entertain themselves by looking at photos on resumes. Little things. If you're going to have the dates on your resume, you better have months and years, because if it's just years, the suspicion is you're hiding something. You're hiding a gap in employment. I think languages are important for people, especially if you're going to go overseas. But in the U.S., I suggest that one trick I use, if you want to get into a company, try to find the person you would likely report to. You can get a name. The names are all over the Internet. You can call in blind. Get that person's name and try to contact that person. Have something to say when you reach them. They might tell you you have to call Human Resources, but now you have a name. Now you can call Human Resources and say, hi, I was referred to you by Mr. or Ms. So-and-so. It's a different game. But I always tell people to go to Human Resources last resort and try to find hiring managers first resort, and you flip it around. And this is just one little tip.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do the now. You never had to worry about social media. You know, how does that affect the current day hiring practice? You know, okay, I heard you say you're in LinkedIn. Brother, I'm linked out, okay? I won't join linked out. I won't do Twitter, Flitter, Flutter, or Mutter, okay? I won't do Facebook, Deathbook, Yahoo, Yahoo, or Yoho, okay? And I mean, I'm ignorant on this stuff. You know, every day somebody wants to befriend me, you know? I don't want to be someone's friend who I don't know on the internet. I take Pastor Langford's advice. As important as it is for God to bring the right people into your life, it's important to get the wrong people out of your life. What mistakes are people making by going on social media? Because, I mean, every day, Michael, somebody's getting canned or losing a job opportunity because people go and read their Facebook posts and they talk about going out and get wasted with Sally, especially if they're a girl who's a secretary. I mean, that sinks them in. What are the mistakes people make on social media?
Oh, that's a great observation. Reference checks. You know, we know reference checks traditionally as well. You know, we'd like to make you an offer pending review of your references. But now, your reference check before you even interview, it's part of the selection process. It's a no-brainer. They check Facebook, they check LinkedIn if you're a professional, or they just do a Google search. And the problem is that there are people that are ruled out. They may have a great resume and a great background, but they're stupid enough to have their Facebook page on public. And it doesn't matter how good you are. How would you like to be judged that way? You talk about discriminatory. You're giving people ammunition by posting a drunken picture of you and your friends. So social media, you know, in my world, I have to have it. I have to be on it. But you can control somewhat of the material people see, and this is a big deal. A lot of people, especially younger people, they think, well, you know, I'll do what I want. I'm a free person, but they're not being responsible. So social media commentary, people that like to put inflammatory comments out there, they can be found, and I'm no different. I'm rather opinionated myself. So that is something you have to be careful of. Social media can kill your chances before you even get in.
Well, what about, too, how important are what I would call the stuff that isn't important, like hobbies, you know, what I'd call, well, I can't say that on the radio, stupid stuff that does that really matter? I like to swim. I like to fish. I like to hunt, you know. Is that critical or not? Because when I see a resume like that, I'll tell you what, as somebody that gets a lot of resumes, and, you know, the two I've gotten that are professional, you know, looking for, you know, different people for different reasons, the bottom line is they're good. By the way, they're both veterans, but the point being is that even some of the older guys, now I'm 63, I'd hire a 70-year-old in a heartbeat. I'd hire an 80-year-old. When I was 40 years old, my mentor was a former intelligence agent, and he was, I think, when I hired Jack, he was 70 years old, okay? I learned the most I've ever learned in my entire life from him, okay? Because, I mean, I listen. So how important is it for all, let's answer that question, because I get resumes with what I call stupid stuff. I don't care if they're, you know, running sled dogs to you know, or I mean, I just don't care. I want to know what they've done. Okay, so first question, how important is that? And then tell me what the interviewers are looking for? Because, again, I'm praying that everybody who listens to this tonight will contact you who's out of a job and that God will give them jobs, okay? I believe the blessing of the Lord is what is needed in these people's lives, but they don't have to go out and kill themselves before they even get a chance to get a real interview. So go ahead, Michael, on the first question.
Well, real quick, that's the reason I wrote the book, my handbook, because I knew I can't help everybody. So I put out that information because I always like giving advice, and it's good advice. But to your question, for example, on resumes, there's a lot of stupid stuff, as you mentioned. Some people say they have on their, it's filler, it's hamburger helper. There's no meat there. Hobbies, what are you hoping that if you say, well, I collect dangerous snakes, the hiring manager also collects dangerous snakes, and you're going to hit it off and be buddies? Hobbies don't need to be on there. The objective is even a hamburger helper piece because, what are you going to write on there? Well, I hope to get a job with a growth-oriented company with opportunities. Well, that's generic and stupid. People put on their resumes provided upon request. Of course they are. Why put it on there? I would rather see a shorter and meatier resume. Now, it doesn't have to be long, and if you have one that is 3 pages and you have important information, make it 3 pages. So what? But hiring managers have told me in the past, this is interesting. They say, well, Michael, I see what they're supposed to be doing, but what have they done? And that's key, accomplishment-driven resumes. Did you have any projects you were in charge of? Did you accomplish things? I tell people to put together a FAB presentation, feature, accomplishment, benefit. And what you do is you take a feature of yourself, which is a responsibility, an accomplishment, something you accomplished. Feature plus accomplishment equals benefit. And what you do is you put that together when you talk to people, and it's how you show them why they should consider you. This is separate from the resume, and it's in the handbook, and it's a lot to explain. But on the resume, meat and potatoes, get rid of all that extra garbage. If you do that, people get to the point, they see what you're about, and they don't have to go through all this fluff to get to it.
In essence, tell them what you've done. That's what I want to know. I want to know what someone's done, okay? I want to know if when they work for X, Y, or Z, that sales were, I'm just making this up, $10,000 a month, and when they went to work for, that's what X, the employer, started at, and now they're at $30,000 or $40,000. I want to know. Now, how bad is it when someone is let go? Is that basically, a lot of people have been let go for dumb reasons because of just what I would call generic greed on the part of the employers.
Well, a lot of people are let go for the sin of turning 50 years old.
Yep.
I mean, it's a trend. It's a trend. It's a shame. And for people that are older, I know people right now, they say, well, who's going to want me? I'm 45. Well, that's not true. First of all, there are no expendable people. Everyone has value. Everyone has worth. Everyone has something that they're good at and can do. For people who are older, instead of looking for just full employment, look at contracting. Look at being a contractor. Look at temp to perm. Right now, for example, there are some sectors that there are young people just not going into, and there are shortages. And I do believe that there are opportunities and a lot of things people can contribute. There are a lot of older professionals that have a different perspective on things, and companies are starting to look at that. They're starting to consider people, but you've got to have belief in yourself. And, the resume, if you can put on there what you've done. The problem people do with resumes also is they make it a job description. They just transcribe their job description, which goes back to the person who said, I see what they're supposed to be doing, but what have they done? So any projects, percentage increases, dollars saved, any of that stuff, those are accomplishments.
How important are professional character references, and how should people choose them, okay? I mean, again, I know you must think that I've got the Martians applying for jobs. Sometimes if you saw my email, you would know there's life on other planets, okay? Because I get their emails, and I'm not trying to be unkind. And by the way, I'm a very small guy. I haven't had 50 employees since 2001, but, the point being is, how important is that?
References, Well, first of all, there's three kinds. There's personal, which are absolutely worthless. Never use a personal reference because you can get a friend to say anything. No one respects them. Client references and customer references, I think, are valuable. And then, of course, management references. And the time to think about references when you're interviewing is at the end of a good second interview. That's when you start assembling them. Don't wait to think about it when they ask you. You should be already ahead of the game. As far as the kinds of references, when you think about it, if you have a good customer, ask them, hey, could you write me a reference letter? I'd like to have it for my packet. If it's an employer and you leave a job, you better get it then, because as time goes on, you're off their radar screen. And if you're a young student, hey, if school is your full-time job, then a professor could be one. If you're military, you could do the same thing. But people whose opinion you'd be proud to have as representing you, I think is helpful. So references are kind of vague, and a one bad reference is not a deal killer. Someone might give a bad reference, but have more than 3 or 4 that you can turn to.
What at this point would you say the employment opportunity is in Europe for, let's say, a skilled American, good communication skills, good track record, okay, and basically, what do you see in your world? Because you're in Czechoslovakia, obviously I'm Bozeman, Montana, big difference. Mm-hmm. The point being is, what do you see that the average company that you represent, what skills are they looking for?
Well, this is where we as Americans are at a bit of a disadvantage. We don't speak any other languages. And that is one of the issues that confronts people. That's why I tell everyone, if you have kids in school, please get them to learn another language. But that's one small thing. However, the companies that I'm talking to, really skills and track record are important. But attitude, a lot of times there was a search I worked on one time real quick. They told me you need 10 things. We need 10 things for this person to be able to do and meet the criteria. I said, okay. I searched, and then I said, okay, well, I need less than that. What's the minimum you need? Well, they have to have 8 out of the 10. They hired someone, and I had talked to that person and said, hey, they didn't have all the attributes. They only had 6 out of the 10 things you wanted on your checklist. And they said, yeah, but we really like them. Communication skills. A lot of it is culture. Sometimes you meet people and you just hit it off, and they will forgive some things if there's some likability there. I know it sounds silly, and I'm not saying you should kiss their butt, but a lot of the problems people have, I know very good professionals who just have no communication skills. So that's another aspect. And they want people who can get things done. You want to show them that you're indispensable. You want to show people that you can get things done. And I know this is very vague because it's kind of hard to go into too much detail on here, especially because we got other stuff to talk about. But those are just a few pointers. I think my handbook helps. My blog helps.
How do they get your handbook? Just go to your website, and I assume they can get it for whatever you charge. How much you charge for it?
It depends. If it's printed, it's on Amazon for about $12. I have it in ebook form on my blog. I think it's about $10. And like I say, it's something that I like books I can touch and feel personally. But most people are doing ebooks now. But it's good reference.
Not me.
Small enough you can take with you.
Yep, not me. I hate ebooks. I'll tell you what. I believe that with the digitizing of all, quote, the world's knowledge, that Fahrenheit 451 will come back on the scene, especially with Bibles, meaning they're going to burn all the Bibles. You mark my words on that. The possession of a Bible in the years ahead will be a capital offense. Christian literature, Christian theology books, Christian history, true history books, we are seeing Fahrenheit 451. Only now it's going to be 9/11.
Yeah, well, the written word, if there is a crisis and everything is digitized, we're going to lose a lot of knowledge.
Yes, sir. Okay, now one more time on I'm going to have you put on a different hat now. One more time on your website or blog.
Yeah, now my website is the number 4, MOST. It's a play on the word foremost, .cz, because I'm in the Czech Republic. Or you can find me by just putting in there michaelmayer.com, which will take you to my website. And then, of course, the blog is yourcareerquest.blogspot.cz. And I update the blog every Monday.
Go ahead, Doug. I just want to tell our listeners, folks, if you go to Hagmann on the right-hand side under today's program, we have linked to Michael's site. So all you have to do is go to Hagmann and click on the link to Michael's website right on the right-hand side there. It'll take you directly, right on the program for tonight, it'll take you directly there, and we will keep that up in the past show archive, so there'll be a perpetual link, because this information is so important. And thank you, Steve. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to point that out.
Well, no, and I want to share something. The reason that I so am grateful for Michael's friendship, and we're friends, is because he rubs shoulders with some very powerful people around the world. And again, I've learned it's not what you know. Like sometimes, Doug, my critics take me on for, how can he be such an expert or think he's an expert in everything? I don't. I just happen to know a lot of people who are, as referenced by the guests that you bring on or I bring on. Now, obviously, we both know of exceptions to that statement. But, Michael, again, I want you to talk, if you wouldn't mind, in the next, let's say, 10 minutes, obviously as being someone who's involved, quote, with NATO in security issues. I mean, you obviously are watching the total information, not only security, but you're watching the global population come under, if you will, an electronic net to put us all as slaves of the Borg. Share with people kind of how you see this playing out, and personally, is the Czech Republic or other, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go to the Czech Republic, or you want to relocate over there, Michael provides a service. I mean, it takes money to do this. You got to know who to go to. They have all their own rules, green cards or whatever you call them, abilities to work, etc. But let me put you into another mode now, okay? Mm-hmm. As you see all this stuff coming from your side of the world as it relates to basically the end of any how do I say this, lack of freedom or to escape the fishnet that's going to bring everybody into the Borg or kill you if you don't join it. How do you suggest people respond now in this all-invasive big brother? I would assume, is it a fair assumption that it's less in the Czech Republic?
Well, actually, it's really strange. Being a former communist country here, and my wife grew up under communism. She was a young pioneer, and it's odd. I have more personal freedom here than you do there. Now, that will shock people, and especially those that chant USA, USA. But I'm here to tell you, if people come to Prague, for example, they might see someone spitting on the ground. They might see someone who didn't pick up after their dog. However, in the U.S., you can eat off the sidewalks, but you better not step off the sidewalk. So, there's some trade-offs with freedom, and I personally think that I have more freedom here. And Europe, it's a little bit different. It's a little slower pace. Now, you mentioned people that want to immigrate to South America. I think that's great. But as someone with a European past, I just think that if immigration is something that you want, you should consider Europe. If you're of European background, that's the place possibly to go back to if you need an escape route. The UK, I can't speak to the UK. I know there are people that are from there that don't want to be there, just like some people in the US that want to get out. But over here, as far as the clampdown, I'll give you, Ukraine is a perfect example. And people might think, well, why should I go to the Czech Republic? There's fighting in Ukraine. There's quite a distance. But using Ukraine as an example, right now, all the young men are trying to get the heck to Ukraine. And guess what the Czech Republic's doing? They're putting clamps on immigration from Ukraine. So let's say there's a global crisis. Let's say that the sky falls down in the U.S., and everyone thinks, well, I'm an American, I'm going to go elsewhere. The doors will be closed to you. If someone's going to start moving, it takes time. You've got to plan ahead. I had a 15-year-old daughter when I came here, and it took a couple months to prepare to come here. There's a lot of paperwork. Paperwork is the biggest thing, and that's why I put together that service that is also on my website, because if you know someone in the local area, a local guide, it can help you. When I moved here, because I didn't know the language, even though I'm Czech-American, I spent a lot of extra money I didn't have to, because there were a lot of people offering help that didn't do anything for it. There's a lot of con men. Think of it this way. If you emigrate to another country, you are an immigrant. Think of how we look at immigrants. Think of how they're treated. Well, if you come here just because you're an American with money, you want to fit in. You want to assimilate. For example, if you were in Central America, you might be that gringo on the hill with a lot of money when times are good. When times are bad, even there, you're the gringo on the hill with a lot of money. So assimilation is very important for those who move to an area. When I got here, I didn't hang out with the expats and the Americans. I dove into Czech culture, and I love it. And so I think that's part of it. It's a mindset. You know, if you're going to move somewhere else, you're going to, you know, just like we expect people to assimilate when they come to America, it's wise to do the same thing if you go elsewhere. But as far as freedoms and clampdown, yeah, I see it. I see it. You know, the only drawback for Americans moving overseas, to be honest, is banking. Investment people over here, I get calls from them. Oh, do you want to invest your money? As soon as they find out I'm an American, they say, oh, sorry, can't help you. The tax reporting laws are so stringent that it's becoming difficult. Banks are shutting down Americans for bank accounts. Do you realize how limiting this is? You are being a prisoner. Now, here, I know a financial advisor, and he's told me just recently, no, Mike, it's still okay. There's about 4 or 5 banks. You're fine. So the thing is if you're going to emigrate, and I have the equivalent of a green card because I've been here so long. I was qualified for it after 7 years. You have to do a visa every year, repeat it, and then after a while, you can get permanent residency in the Czech Republic, for example, and also for American citizens, if you want to get a Czech passport, you got to give up your American passport. I'm not ready to do that, even if I'm Czech-American, but the restrictions, there's more and more of them. So my contention, and we've spoken about this, you and I, if you're going to make the move, you can't wait for crisis to happen. You got to plan ahead.
Amen. Now, again, the next point that I really want you to cover is the fact that as you sit in the Czech Republic, obviously the Ukraine situation's going on, the Russian situation, I got to ask you, and I will use, no, I won't say that. I'll say, what the heck is going on with the provocation of the United States? Because, look, when we started going into the the Russian Federation and started encroaching, putting missile systems and everything else, everything that had been built, and look, I understand Russian communism. I wrote about Soviet war policy 20 years ago, okay, when it was the Soviet Union. But I got to tell you that it's heating up, and as you live in the Czech Republic, you're seeing President Putin is probably one of the strongest world leaders. I would say the strongest world leader, and if you compare him to that which is controlling the United States, it's pretty obvious that there is another game in play. So what's your take on why NATO, this is a million-dollar question, why NATO is trying to intentionally provoke Russia to war? And they are.
Yeah, they are. And, regarding Putin, Russians call him their Reagan. So, it depends on your perspective. I am a patriot in the classic sense of the word, not the, tell everyone what to do sense of the word. But what I'm seeing, it's hard to understand. Czechs, for example, who lived under communism, they look at things two different ways. One, they say, why are Americans putting up with losing their liberties? They were the leader in that area, and Americans just don't seem to be upset about anything. On the other hand, they say, it's really strange. Now we don't see much difference between American policies, not the people, policies, governmental policies, and what used to be the USSR. And it is kind of, and I'm an old Cold Warrior. I served in the military in the 80s, and I find it hard to understand. But there is pressure being applied, and it's almost like it's intentional. I think it's to mask bad news at home. I think it's to keep everyone directed on something else. And it doesn't make sense, but there is an encirclement going around. You know, when you're going into Ukraine, you're right there near their border.
Well, look, here's the deal, too. The Illuminati, I've quoted, the Third World War that's written, and some people want to take me to task on Albert Pike didn't really write it to Mazzini or vice versa. But, hey, the plan is still going on, and the document goes back to the time. Who cares who wrote it? Someone's following it. Global war has to be initiated for the return of the Islamic savior. And isn't it fascinating that obviously, you know this, I know you listen to this show, but the American military is being purged of all Christians and all constitutionally loyal officers, admirals, generals, and, from the top to the bottom, they're being purged. So the point is that at the expense of the military being taken apart in this country, Michael, and the private military of the president, which is now the DHS et al., ETALL, the rest of the world can only relate to that. You can put it into the perspective of Nazis, you can put it into the perspective of Stalinistas, you can put it into the perspective of Mao Zedong, you can put it into the perspective of Pol Pot, you can put it into the perspective of Nero. I'm talking Nero. So as we look at this, the point being is that everybody's looking for someone else to give them a way out. And if you had to guess, and I'm going to put you on, and look, this is just your guess, so I'm not holding you to it, and I'm not asking you to go on record with something you'd feel uncomfortable with, but if you had to guess based on how the rest of the world sees the United States and what you're seeing, the policies, especially money, we're already seeing exchange controls and the banks not wanting to deal with America. Somebody once said when borders, von Clausewitz, when goods don't cross borders, armies do. Well, that stands, when you're talking about capital, finances, when they're no longer allowed to leave freely and come and go freely, then the only thing you're left with is military exploitation and war. So how long do you believe that the door will be open, just a wild guess, for people to leave who want to leave? I'm not saying everybody should leave. I'm not saying anybody should leave. I'm just saying for those who feel directed by the Lord to leave, how long would you guess that door is going to be open?
I would turn it around a little bit, and I would say that if you have been contemplating relocation for a while, you better start doing something about it. At least do the investigation. Learn about what's necessary. Let's use the Jewish question in World War II, before World War II. 6 million Jews died in the death camps. Okay, well, before the hammer came down, there were signs, and a lot of Jews left. But a lot more waited, and they waited, and they waited. It won't happen here. We'll be okay. And look what happened. If the signs are there, I think, and you want to immigrate, you should be doing some research. For example, we talked about the service that I'm providing. Let me just read through, and I'll read through them fast because it's blinding. Transportation and lodging, house hunting, real estate, moving services, location suitability, schools, Czech language. I'll give you an example. Here, talk about immigration. Czechs require for permanent residency that 2,400 words in Czech. Okay, you have to learn the local language. If you're going to relocate, you have to have a bank account established. It's not a whole lot, but you got to have that established. You have to have apostilles for all your documentation, birth certificates, stuff like that. An apostille, if people don't know what that is, it's a super notary. You have to write to the Secretary of State from the state where you were born and get your birth certificate in an apostille. And it's got a nice pretty ribbon on it, but it's official. It's more official. Then you have to have those translated in the local language. You have to have a service that does the translation. Now, this sounds daunting, but it's just admin garbage. And so you've got to find people that can do this stuff. And that's why I decided to offer that service, because I can point people in the direction of financial advisory, real estate. In my country over here, you have to have a small company entity if you're a foreigner, if you want to buy property. It sounds, again, daunting, but it's not. It's just stuff you don't know how to do because you haven't done it. But these are the kind of things that you have to consider if you're going to emigrate. And if I go through this whole list, it's evidence you better start now. And if you already think that the sky is starting to fall, then you're behind the curve already.
Amen. Well, obviously, language and skills. Is it possible? I can tell you, this would be my questioning, listening in from any place in the world. Is it possible for an American with skills? What type? Let me change it. What type? I'll do what you just did. What type of skills are sought after by, let's say, a Czech employer that would be willing to hire Americans? I mean, have you placed Americans with the appropriate skills in Czech jobs?
Yeah, I have. The problem is, and it's a problem of expectation. Americans traditionally think that if they show up someplace, they're God's gift. I should be, the door should swing open. And there are job opportunities, but you're going to get hired at Czech scale. Unless there's a job that they can't find a Czech to fill that is specialized, skilled, accounting, professional services, stuff like that, lawyers, those things, yeah, those are pretty easy. It's not easy, but you can get a job. But regular, typical skills, that's a tougher road to hoe. For example, you have to have a work permit to be here, so that means you've got to find a job. And it's kind of chicken or egg. It's difficult. But for an average American who wants to go abroad, again, put yourself in the shoes of an immigrant coming to the United States, and that's what you're going to face. I hate to, not, sugarcoat it, but put yourself in the shoes of an immigrant that comes to America, and that's what you got to deal with. It's not impossible. I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I did it, learned a lot of hard lessons along the way, but again, it's about planning.
Well, okay, let me ask you this now. Would it not be true that any place that you would try and place someone who's an American citizen, if it's Germany, if it's Italy, they should know the language? I mean, I can't see how an American who only speaks English could get a language in a foreign country not speaking the language of that country.
Well, there's one good thing, and until it changes, English is the international language of business. For tourism, everything. Legal, it's the language of business. Granted, yeah, you're going to have a much better chance if you speak the local language. For example, I can trace my Czech family roots to the year 1729, and I've done it. I've done the genealogy stuff. When I got here, I didn't speak good Czech, but they knew I was one of them because I could relate my family past. I could name the towns my family was from. And that gave me a little bit of slack. They looked at me and they thought, okay. And also, I didn't carry any hubris with me. But if you are Irish, you might consider there. I know 2 veterans that I've talked to in the last 3 months that are moving to Denmark. One, his wife is Danish. The other just wants to go there. And Denmark is a nice place. They have very high taxes, but it's clean. And they have English as a second language because during the 60s and 70s, they didn't add subtitles to cartoons. Cartoons were broadcast in English, like original, and that's why most Danes speak English fluently. And Europe is like that in large part. Most people speak English in the big cities.
Well, as we see the door closing to freedom, I guess then here's the thing. There was a time when people could get a job in the United States. Now we've got, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Every trade agreement has resulted in, and I don't know when you've been in this country the last time, but the point is that the middle class is effectively dead. I mean, the rest of the world looks on, and we've got close to 100 million, plus or minus a couple million people unemployed. We've got, 49 million people on food stamps. Less than 30% of the people fund the other 70%. Record taxes, record giveaway, and immigrants that come to the United States illegally get $35K in benefits the first year. $35K. If someone wanted to go, for instance, to Czech Republic, what's the average starting wage for, let's say, a skilled person? I mean, you say that the people in America set their sights too high. What's the starting wage over there from someone that would immigrate?
Well, let me put it this way, and I'll come back to that. Over here, you can live like a king, $100,000 a year. You can live very well on $60,000 a year. You can live middle class on $40,000 a year and less. You can make $30,000 a year, and you can still get by, you have food on the table. You're not suffering. So the thing is that over here, if I would say that Americans, they inflate what they think they're worth. But for a Czech, for example, they would make much less money, and they would think that they're doing just fine. It's hard to place a number on it. I would say, though, it's 30% less.
Okay, well, that's a good number. Give out your contact information one more, because we're down to the last closing minutes of the show, and I don't want, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for a job, I know Michael. If you're a veteran, he is a veteran. If you are in the security field, his knowledge of the, let's just say this, the world of esoteric security, and that's what the world's going after, is exemplary. So I can only share with you that I've known him for some time, and he is probably one of the most straight-up guys I've ever met, and I think you can tell from his knowledge base, he knows what he's talking about. So, Michael, one last time on your website and how to contact you.
Yeah, I'd say the easiest thing is just put in the michaelmayer.com, and that'll take you to my foremost website. So Michael Mayer, Mayher, and foremost is most.cz.
Fantastic. And again, I just want to remind people that it is linked off of Hagmann and Hagmann.com. We'll keep it up there, Michael Mayer, and very coherent for being almost 5 o'clock in the morning there, your time.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, as always, talking to both of you.
Thank you, Michael. God bless you.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, Doug.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again for letting Ross come on. He and I spoke before the show, and there's some things he can't say because of who he used to work for, and I think he just maybe has turned in his resignation. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know I first met Ross when he was intimately involved with a housing crash, and that's how I think he listened to me on Coast to Coast or someplace, it doesn't matter, but I can tell you what, he knows what's going on. And after he shared that information, I put it up on my website, 2 weeks ago, about the insiders and stuff. You've heard a lot of information. Again, I would encourage you to take it to the Lord in prayer, but those of you who think that you're going to retire on your 401, IRAs, whatever, you need to get a hold of him on his website and at least talk to him. The point is that we are on a ticking time bomb. It is running out against us, and the whole premise of Jade Helm, as far as I can tell from everybody that I'm talking to, even those who claim it might just be a cover-up for all the natural disasters, whether it's a comet, earthquake, volcano, they all come back to the fact that crashing the economy is the best way at this point to put the maximum amount of people on the streets, protest, generate a civil war, i.e. Dmitry Duduman's vision, and bring the military in to crush. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, if you love the flag of the United States, if your brothers, fathers, sisters, mothers, whoever died to defend this country or still live, it ain't the same place anymore. I'll quote, the only thing I've ever agreed with, the only time I believe the president ever told the truth, America's the greatest country in the world, and we intend to change all that. Ask this, repent from the heights you've fallen. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the only answer I have for everybody is seek the Lord Jesus while he may be found. Tomorrow night, by the grace of God, I'll be on Coast to Coast, and I think it will be a pretty interesting conversation conversation because it's going to be centered around where we're really at. And I think to sound corny, it's so far beyond later than we think. You might as well shoot the alarm clock because it rang a couple years ago. Doug, God bless you. Joe, God bless you. Thanks so much for letting us come on tonight. Ross and I and Michael Mara, he is a prince of a man, and I consider it a blessing to know him as a brother. Doug,
Amen.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
God bless you too, Steve. Thank
you,
for
brother.
great show. And thank you, Mr. Ross Powell and Michael,
Wow.
for your contribution.
Fantastic. All right, with that, we're up against it. Just God bless each and every one of you. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for being part of our extended family. We do love each and every one of you, and thanks for your emails and your cards and letters. We read them all. God
Tomorrow
bless.
night, Greg Jackson talking about the Supreme Court decision on homosexual marriage and judicial supremacy.
Amen. Have a good night.